Himali, you may start the recording and you may start the conclave.
अशोक लेलैंड है हमारे साथ ना इसको
Morning to everyone. I, Mali Nelwan from NBQP Quality Council of India, welcome you all to our 24th Virtual Quality Conclave. As you may be aware that QCI organizes quality conclaves around contemporary themes to help the industry, consumers, and other stakeholders understand the challenges and the opportunities better and adopt the best practices in quality and technology to strengthen the quality ecosystem. Continuing with the same approach, QCI has organized today's conclave on the theme Decarbonization, Climate Change and Sustainability. Personally, I have been alien to the words like carbon emission, decarbonization, etc. And of course, there's been always a debate around climate change and sustainability. But I'm certain that today's conclave will not only spread awareness around these topics, but will also raise questions even to the people who are not associated with this domain. The key objectives of the conclave is to create awareness about challenges before India achieving carbon goal, environmental and climate changes challenges, and sustainability. We have eminent speakers with us today with 3 significant sessions. Dear participants, without any delay, let me introduce Dr. Manish Kumar Jindal for his welcome address. Dr. Jindal is the CEO of National Accreditation Board for Education and Training, NABIT, a statutory board of Quality Council of India, QCI. He is a postgraduate in engineering, law, and management. He has served for 26 years in various capacities. He started his career as faculty in Haryana government, technical education department, and subsequently served as a joint secretary in State Board of Technical Education, Haryana. Assistant Director, AICTE, Joint Secretary, CBSC, Registrar, National Institute of Technology, Harimpur, and Malviya National Institute of Technology, Jaipur, State University of Visual and Performing Arts, Rohtak, and Punjab Engineering College, Chandigarh. Welcome, sir. Over to you.
Thank you, Himali. I'm really delighted to be a part of this VQC, which is addressing one of the very prominent issues which we are facing as of now in the globe. I welcome all eminent speakers, participants, and my colleagues to this event. I am really thankful to J.S. Sharma ji, Ahmed ji, and Dr. S.K. Goel for agreeing to be speaker for different identified sessions. In my understanding, this conclave is likely to at least show us a roadmap, talk about the issues which Honorable Prime Minister has flagged in the last summit, where he assured the world that by 2070, we would have zero carbon footprint. Only a few months back, there was a major global conclave at Glasgow, where all the world heads deliberated on this issue. And I understand there is a sensitivity across the global citizenry for this particular issue, where it is our responsibility to give right kind of environment ecology to our future generations. It is part of our commitment towards our coming generations. With these, I understand that decarbonization, how to achieve it, what are the challenges, there is likely to be a big talk on this aspect. As far as sustainability is concerned, we all understand that as a developing economy, we have to find an optimal balance between economy and the ecological challenges. how to fine tune, how to treat this difficult path. That is a big challenge for countries like India, because at the end of the day, the food, the basic needs of common citizenry is to be fulfilled, for which industrialization, road, infrastructure, ports, airports, all these things are really important. And we all do understand whenever we undertake any major infrastructure development, it is likely to affect to some extent the ecology and the environment. So how do we find a balance? How do we mitigate? How do we monitor? How do we measure and ensure that sustainability is maintained? So that is a really a big challenge. And I do appreciate that NABET, through its EIA Environment Impact Assessment Scheme, tries to contribute a little bit for that particular cause of sustainability. In concluding words, I would only say that I hope that participants would be more educated, more learned, more sensitized, make more aware after participation in this conclave. Once again, I'm thankful to CEO NBQP and his team, Pooja, Himali, for organizing this particular event. I am also thankful to my colleagues in EIA, Mr. Jha, Pawan, for contributing in organizing of this conclave. I really look forward for physical face-to-face conclaves in future, where we can have not only formal but also informal interaction with the participants and the speakers, and we do arrive at certain better outcome. Thank you. Namaskar. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, sir. Moving further, let me introduce Mr. A.K. Jha for his special address. Mr. Jha is a Senior Director, NABET QCI, who has his bachelor's degree in science, geology honors, and his master's degree in geology from Banaras Hindu University. He has 30 plus years of experience in the field of environment, EIA, prospecting, exploration, and mining. By profession, a geologist, extensively worked for geological and mining plan reports and environmental impact assessment studies and reports. For the last 5+ years, working as Senior Director NABET, Quality Council of India, leading the accreditation schemes for the EIA consultants, groundwater and exploration and mining consultants. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Ivani. And am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are audible.
Okay. So, very good morning to all. Respected CEO, our CEO Nave, and distinguished speakers, Sri J.S. Sharma, Mr. Ahmed, and Dr. Goyal, who will be today delivering and taking 3 different sessions. And as the topic of the today's discussion, what we are having is a very common word, and every day and at times we listen decarbonization, climate change, and sustainability. All the participants, first of all, very good morning. Welcome to this one, this virtual quality conclave. I really appreciate NBQP for giving us such a platform for discussing different topics at different point of time. So it keeps us engaged in doing, thinking, and working on these issues. So thank you all and very good morning. And I would just like to put before you that today what we will be discussing, the main word decarbonization, climate change, and sustainability. Today, uh, we are to think is in this direction. And because, as we know, environment is the nature and our surroundings, which encompasses all, whether it is animals, humans, plants, whatever we see, that comes under this ambit of environment. So it includes atmosphere, land, water, sunlight, plant, animal, and take a name of anything. So this together is an environment, and any change in this, what we see and what we feel, is a climate change in very simple terms. But the intricacies of all these words and all these we will be discussing today, and our eminent speakers will uh, let us know that what is the impact and what is the if we do not take care, what is going to happen. So it is responsibility of each and everyone to think on it, uh, some or other way, must contribute for it, and to achieve the goal. Uh, we will be, we are only who is going to think about it. So the session is divided into three parts, and the first is global quest for net zero emission target. Challenges before India for achieving uh, carbon goal by 2070. The major aspect is why all this is happening, because we are to keep our global warming below 1.5 degrees centigrade. Uh, Otherwise, the everything which is related will change, and we keep on experiencing the impacts of climate change. So our annual greenhouse gas emission is to be reduced in the coming years. If implemented effectively, net zero emission pledge could limit warming to 2.2 degrees centigrade, closer to the well below 2 degrees centigrade goal of the Paris Agreement. Net zero means that any emission are balanced by absorbing an equivalent amount from the atmosphere. In order to meet the 1.5 degree centigrade global warming target, as per the Paris Agreement, global carbon emissions should reach net zero around mid-century. So this is the topic what we'll be discussing, and our speaker will throw more light on that. The second session is climate change and sustainability, because we have our expert from aviation field, so he will give an insight of that field and in total regarding the climate change and sustainability. As we know, sustainable development influences both greenhouse gas emissions that are causing climate change. So it is very interrelated now. Stabilizing climate and limiting physical climate risks reduce the additional GHG to the atmosphere. Its impacts are, as we see and every day we hear, more frequent wildfires, longer period of drought in some regions, an increase in the number, duration, as we see, if we see in terms of Delhi's situation today, we are sort of 45%, 42% rain, as it is in the newspaper, it is giving. So you see, these are the direct changes, what is visible. And it is not like that whatever is we are talking and which is invisible. And we are facing day to day all these impacts in our life. So there are so many challenges that has to be taken care of by doing your bit to act on it. So there are various methods, various things. Our speaker will throw light. I will not speak much on that. Environment and climate change challenges. Basically, EIA professionals, environmental impact assessment professionals, they are directly working, have to work to lead this to achieve the goal. So with this, I will not discuss. So after the third speaker, what we are, who is with us is also very eminent person from NIRI, Dr. S.S. Goyal. He will be giving good insight on it. So with this, thank you very much and enjoy the session. Whatever questions and answers you will be having at the end of time, at the end of the session, if we have, we can discuss some, and you can write to us and we will get back to you with the answer. Thank you very much and thanks.
Thank you so much, sir. Participants, as we are at the end of the inaugural session and starting with the technical sessions, during the technical sessions, in case the participants have any questions, they may type their question in the chat box along with the name of the speaker whom they would like to ask the question. Questions will be taken up at the end of the respective sessions. So let's start with the technical session. And as already introduced by sir, the topic for the first session is Global Quest for Net Zero Emission Target, Challenges Before India for Achieving Carbon Goal by 2070. And the speaker for this topic is Dr. J.S. Sharma, former Group General Manager, Head Environment, Oil and Natural Gas Corporation Limited, ONGC. Dr. Sharma has more than 38 years of experience and specializes in environment pollution prevention and control. Served ONGC as Group General Manager, Head Environment till June 2018, including at Oil Industry Safety Directorate, MOPNG as Additional Director, did PhD in Chemistry from Agra University and postdoctoral studies from Japan on global environmental issues, 1992-1993. As STA Fellow, Japan Research Development Corporation, Meiji Government of Japan. So with this, I welcome Dr. J.S. Sharma, sir. Over to you.
Thank you, madam. And respected Jha, respected CEO, I am very much thankful for giving me this opportunity. And as Mr. Jha has said, that climate, sustainability, decarbonization has become the buzzword of today. Yes, they are buzzword, but world is worried about the climate, which is really changing and everybody is experiencing. One of the Nobel laureate, Mr. Dieter, who was awarded Nobel Prize 99 in physics, he said Earth is only one. And the people who are living on the Earth, they are only suitable for this planet. They are not, their body is not suitable to any other planet. So Earth has to be prevented at all costs. So climate, there is the emergency and we have to protect our Earth ecosystem at all costs. So before I start, let me share my presentation with you. Is my screen is visible?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
visible.
So I move forward from this. Our basic understanding about climate change is climate is changing. Emissions continue to rise even after Kyoto Protocol. Global temperature is on rise, and this is being a threat to the humanity. We must stabilize the global temperature at all level. It is if it is not dangerous. Assessment Report 6 of the IPCC, which was released in March 22, temperature rise, they predict about 2 to 3.7 degrees Celsius if global emissions as they stand today are not curtailed. Fifth assessment report of IPCC clearly states cumulative total emissions of carbon dioxide and global mean surface temperature response are approximately linearly related. This means we must adopt a goal to achieve at least net zero anthropogenic CO2 emissions in long run in order to stabilize global temperature level may be applicable all level of temperatures. So this is the origin of the net zero from where it has come, and we have to, the global leaders are working on this. The background of net zero emissions, there was the impact of COVID. 135 million people pushed into the poverty by 2030. Global economy is suffering with COVID economics distress and reeling due to the climate disasters. 2020 was one of the three warmest years on record, and 2011 to 20 will be the warmest decade on record. 2022 witnessed increasing wildfire, extreme on land and sea temperature, including Arctic and more intense tropical cyclone at East Coast and West Coast in India, increased ocean acidification, salinity, hurricanes in the Atlantic. The background, if you go for the net zero emission, is that G20 nations, which account for 80% of global greenhouse gas emissions, are not able to honor their Paris Agreement commitments. Australia, US, and Canada are falling short for their target. Developed nations have also failed to meet their commitment of climate finance for developing nations, which was the part of the Paris Agreement. The current policies of the countries have put the planet on 3.2 degree temperature increase trajectory. And this is the paradox to the net zero emission because the G20 countries committed over $230 billion on fossil fuel industry to revive the economy post-COVID, compared to the 150 billion in the clean energy. The US, UK, Canada, Russia, and India are also pursuing major expansion in the fossil fuel supply. So one way we are going for the reductions, other way we are promoting then there are the energy requirement, development requirement we have to do. One has to avoid, one cannot avoid all these things. Most emissions come from few countries. 3%, if you see this globe, the green part is only the 100 least emitting countries, if you see here. And the red part is the 68%, the 10 largest greenhouse emission emitters contribute over 2/3 of global emissions. That is and the 46%, the top three GHG emitters are contribute 16 times of the emission of the bottom 100 countries. So highest contributors are China, United States of America, European Union, India, Russian Federation, Japan, Brazil, Indonesia, Iran, and Canada. So India stands fourth in these emissions. Next. What are the net zero emissions? This is very important to understand. The positive emissions are by source. For example, by burning of fuels, cutting down the forest, they are the positive emissions. Negative, removal by sink, growing new forest, engineered removal of CO2 from the atmosphere. So the net emissions, net zero is 1 plus 2. Emission by sources plus removal by the sink. So this is the net zero emission. If the net zero, if the removal is more than the emissions, then it becomes the negative emissions. The need for net zero emissions, the global temperature will stop rising when CO2 emissions reach zero. That means emissions and removal balance. This is essentially defined that the carbon budget CO2 is a cumulative pollutant. One can CO2 in our country is not declared as a pollutant, but globally the greenhouse gases, this is major greenhouse gases, and this has become a cumulative pollutant. One can convert it depending upon the global warming potential to the CO2 as a whole. An emission of CO2 causes permanent damage. Non-CO2 emissions play an important role, but smaller role. For example, declining methane means emission lead to the declining temperature. And dinitrogen oxide behaves more like CO2, but emissions are much smaller as of now. Then there is a enormous pressure on the net zero emissions from the global leaders on India. In 21, there was a visit of John Kerry, climate envoy of US President Biden, ahead of the climate leaders summit held in April 21. And now he was in India sometime end of the before the COP26. The US assured the world of its commitment to a net zero emission target for 2050. UK, France enacted legislations for net zero emissions scenario by the middle of the century. Canada, South Korea, Japan, Germany have also expressed their intention to commit themselves to a net zero future. China has promised to go for net zero by 2060. Then there was a pressure in backdrop of UN conference on climate change COP26. There was a follow-up visit by the Arun Sharma, who was president of the COP26 in last July. In COP26, there was big push for adoption of net zero emissions by 2050 national commitment for every country. Then G7 nations have exerted pressure on developing economies in G20 to sign on the net zero target. India's development need is priority. Within G20, it was very much challenging for India to agree for net zero commitment at the cost of development needs. India is one of the few nations among G20 which is on target to meet the nationally determined contribution under the Paris Climate Accord and undertaking some of the biggest climate actions anywhere in the world. The rich countries continue with their high emissions level and left limited carbon budget for developing countries, and they did not honor the committed in the climate change for the financing to the developing countries. Then there is an emission pathway. There are various model experts. They develop certain models and they found that how much so far carbon dioxide has been released and how much we need more can be released to maintain the 1.5 degree. The Peter Glein, he is the researcher who made this research and found that the 2,350 gigatons cumulatively CO2 has been released till date. And we can emit very limited amount of this. The brown portion in this graph shows the left one is the only 580 gigatons we can release to maintain the 1.5 degree scenario. So this is that means 580 is limited. If the present rate of the release is considered, this can be finished in few years. So climate change or net zero will be a reality or not, this has to be seen and very seriously. Out of 196 parties of the Paris Agreement, 130 parties submitted a new or updated National Action Plan called NDC as required by the agreement. These countries considering a target of reducing emissions net zero by mid-century. This is the progress they have made it, and the planned combined emissions reduction by 2030 still fall far short of the level of ambition needed to achieve 1.5 degree goal. The one of the author, these revelations were made by the Britain-based Carbon Brief, and they studied the Indian certain metro cities, and they found in the last 1 century, the Delhi increased by 1 degree Celsius, Mumbai temperature increased by 0.7 degree, and Chennai by 0.6 degree, Kolkata by 1.2 degree over a century and a half. Then emission pathway with the net zero. there are likely sectors where too hard or and where the emission cut is too expensive. So to zero. So carbon dioxide removal by afforestation or by can offset any means emissions leading to net zero emissions. In this, I am showing the green portion is the carbon dioxide removal, which is the residual. The net budget is 661, and the residual means residuals means the emissions or any greenhouse emissions which remain after a project or organization has implemented and all technically and economically feasible opportunities are there. So they are called the residual emissions. So residual emissions in case is 750 gigawatt, net budget is 660 gigawatt. If you minus the carbon dioxide removal, then this comes to 661. Next. Caution for net zero understanding. All targets shall specify about emission sources which gases are covered. This is the, when the countries declared their commitment, so they are in general nature. They do not specify that which gases are covered, CO2, all greenhouse gases or subset for net zero with timeline. And so whether the intent is to reduce or remove the offset the emissions. So this part is not very clear by the commitment given by the various countries. The Paris Agreement considers all greenhouse gas emissions that cannot be eliminated have to be balanced by removing an equivalent amount of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. In the pathway for limiting warming to 1.5 degree, as per IPCC, the net zero CO2 emissions by 2050, this will take another decade. In case, if we consider the CO2 limitings and greenhouse gas emissions, there is a difference of always 1 or 2 decades. So here is the picture. You can see the left side is reaching the net zero CO2 target. We can reach some. This has been researched by the Rogi et al. The Rogi et al. He is one of the author of one of the research paper where he has come out with this kind of revelation that reaching the net zero CO2 target, residual CO2 emissions are balanced by an equal amount of CO2 removal by 250 or 260 nearly. And another decade or 2 decades by if we want to reach the net zero in case of greenhouse gas target, this will take by 270, 275 like that. At the COP26, the Honorable Prime Minister of India has committed and said 5 nectars element Panchamrit. And he announced that India will take its non-fossil energy capacity to 500 gigawatt by 2030. Second, India will meet 50% of its energy requirement from renewable energy by 2030. Third, India will reduce the total projected carbon emissions by 1 billion ton from now till 2030. Fourth, by 2030, India will reduce the carbon intensity of its economy by more than 45%. And fifth, by the year 2070, India will achieve the target of the net zero. This we kept it 10 years later from the China. The Indian carbon emission business as usual a challenge. Today we are releasing almost 2.5 gigatons, and by 2050 it will be 6 gigatons estimated. To neutralize this kind of emission, our country needs create massive forest of around 30 to 40 million hectares, the size of Rajasthan, and of significant deployment of carbon capture, utilization, and storage. Or some new technology will come in the time to come, which can fix the carbon dioxide directly from the air. So this will be a very big challenge to address this thing. Challenges. Net zero vis-a-vis the development, the cost. Highly accelerated decarbonization plan to be achieved by 2070 has not been debated much. Commitment to 500 gigawatt for renewable energy by 2030. As of now, we are almost 100 gigawatt. So this we have to see the funding from where it will come and where is the land area and whether the food is the priority or energy will be priority. This we have to see. The technologies. CCUS, CCS, space solar power, and hydrogen, etc., green hydrogen, etc., are the future potential technology to take shape at the cost. And we are of experience that every 20 years or 30 years, the technology changes. In the Stone Ages, we started with the wood, then we come to the coal, then we come to the steam, then oil, then gas, then solar, and so on. So we cannot say that any one energy and new technology will last forever. So people have started now talking with helium energy. People are now making buzz lot of for green hydrogen. Now after green hydrogen, now people are started helium technology. Then the carbon sink, the creation of additional cumulative carbon sink by growing forest and tree cover by 2030 for at least 2.5 to 3 gigatons. So this all required in a structured way. Only this will be a big challenge. Then another challenge, the vast gap between what we need to be doing and where we are currently, according to AR6 IPCC CO2 report, need to come down by 45% globally compared to 2005 by 2030. Whereas the current trend shows reduction is falling quite short. Total impact of nationally determined contribution is still 11% only. So this is another challenge. What we will get it or not. Then developed nations' contribution to the carbon dioxide is highest and have resources and capability to curtail emissions, but unwilling to take this responsibility going forward. This is the major issue which they have committed in the Paris Agreement, not followed for the developing countries. Making energy transition, how do we enhance the uptake of renewables in the electricity system, and from where will the funding will come from? This is another aspect to think about the policymakers and decision makers. The question about the next course of action on decarbonization pathway remains untouched till date and yet to begin. The financial implications. The greenhouse mitigation would be around 80% to $81 trillion, and this will be about 35% of incremental GDP by 2050. Roughly, the undiscounted additional energy system cost for net zero transition 22 to 50 could be over by 110 trillion, and this cost excludes investment cost associated with electric charging, biofuel production, hydrogen dispensing, infrastructure. Moreover, the trajectory of additional investment cost is such that it demands a sharp uptick in the years coming, even crossing 50% of GDP in 2030. So there are enormous challenges which we have to encounter and we have to overcome to meet the net zero, because planet is only one. Cost of transition for India to make the business as usual, policymakers to decide. However, there is a fair amount of political risk of accelerated decarbonization, since the required additional investment would have to be diverted from the development investment. Climate negotiations are not just environment discussion, but strategic talks with many international pulls and pressures, and decisions will have to be taken accordingly. I have to say that the cost of net zero transition by 2070 will be significant for India. Conclusion: to conclude, India's mitigation effort must resolve largely around mobilizing the funds and investing in the innovation of technology. Rise of 1.5 degree in global temperature will be precarious. A 2 degrees rise would be catastrophic. We need to decarbonize as much as possible, as fast as possible, including having global emissions by 2030 and reaching net zero by 2070. The climate problem will be solved when everyone stops burning fossil fuels and stop cutting down the forest, and we should depend upon the non-carbon based energy. So India, all roads to successful global clean energy transition go via India only. With this, I end here my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. We have few questions for you.
Right.
There's a question from KN Rajkumar. He's asking, what is the share of industries and agriculture in CO2 emission in Indian context?
It is going to be large amount. It is going to be large amount because methane is also there, and by burning of agro waste, and agro waste is being used by other industry. So it is going to be large number. I can consider it this may be more than 20%.
Okay, sir. And PDIL Noida is asking, and share of vehicular emission as well, which is surely a significant quantity.
Yes. And many studies are being done, but not at global level, I can say. But the Indian level, I can say the energy sector is 58%. The fossil fuel share in energy basket is about 50%, 58%. So the corresponding emissions are from this sector only.
And there's another question just now we got from Vishal Satish. What are the current carbon sequestration technology trending in India?
Please repeat the question. I am not hearing. Yes.
So what are the current carbon synchronization technology trending in India?
Carbon sequestration technology. This is what. Is it
Yes,
carbon
sorry.
sequestration?
Yeah,
Carbon
yes.
sequestration technology. Yeah.
Yes, sir, yes.
Carbon sequestration, one is the normal forestation. This is one. Second is normally we can do it by, we can go by CCUS, the carbon capture, storage and utilization. This is usually done. You absorb the carbon source or carbon dioxide from the major source like thermal power plant and all other places, and inject them to the formations. So those formations need to be find out. But in case of the oil industry, they inject the carbon dioxide in the abundant wells and freeze it. So carbon dioxide is fixed forever. That is it. And another fixation is natural fixation, when the atmospheric CO2 is fixed by the ocean. So you might have been experienced some kind of corals are being found in the some of the sea part like Andamans and other places in the Gulf of Kutch. So they are the absorption of the carbon dioxide by the sea.
Okay, sir. Next question is from MSR Gopal. Is asking, what is the sources of raising funds for switching to renewable sources of energy?
Today the most talked about the renewable source is solar and green hydrogen. But there is an issue. Solar is good because we have enough sunlight availability throughout the year, and the cost has also come down. But there are three things in this. We have the high level of particulate matter which keep depositing on the solar panel. So their cleaning is one issue, one challenge, and the availability of water to clean this. This is one. Then second is the renewability by the wind and the hydro energy, and the most talked about the green hydrogen. Green hydrogen, we need the electrolyzers to split the water, and the water and availability of the water one has to see, because 1 kilogram of hydrogen we need 9 to 10 kilogram of water. So availability of water is a big challenge. This has to be done preferably in the coastal areas where the desalination of water is done and from where the green hydrogen is produced.
Sir, the next question is from Mr. Saurav Sinha. He's asking, what steps are being taken by energy PSUs towards renewable energy?
All energy PSUs are marching forward towards the green hydrogen. This is one. And the solar parks. Solar parks, they have already started. But in our country, the floating platforms of solar panels are not there. They are yet to be set up, and some studies are on for the floating panels. But hydrogen, people are working, like Indian Oil is already working, and Oil India has already set up electrolyzer plant in Pune, and ONGC is also doing. They have also a very big solar park in Bhuj and in Rajasthan.
Okay, sir. The next question is from S. Verma. If we consider the life cycle analysis of EV vehicles, will they be carbon neutral, negative, or positive?
It will be carbon negative you can consider, because there is the issue of only the disposal of batteries. When massive scale vehicle is used, then the disposal of batteries has to be done uh, in very carbon friendly way. If that is not done, then it will be carbon positive. Otherwise, carbon negative.
Okay, sir. This next question from Mr. Venugopal. Is CO2 part of GHG or they are accounted for separately?
No, it is the part of GHG, but people, there are some mathematical calculations available. The remaining gases other than carbon dioxide, they can be converted to the CO2 equivalent. So there are both kind of representations are there.
Okay, sir. Mr. MSR Gopal wants to know, would it be right to make it mandatory to the present industries to switch to renewable energy source, and to what extent it is possible to insist?
It is very difficult. It is not practical, because we have coal for next 70 years. Even during COVID period, in the developing countries, they have no, not COVID period, I'm sorry. During this Ukraine war, some of the few European countries, they switched over to their coal-based operations. So it is always, coal is always dependable. In our country also, for next 70, 80 years, coal is there. It is going to be used. Separate ministry is there, full infrastructure there. So it has to be utilized. But only thing is how to reduce the carbon dioxide emissions from various technologies, recovery or washing of coals. And I think for this, our Jhasa is the expert. Jhasa is the expert. Sometimes we talk about it.
Okay. Mr. Ganpati wants to know, is there any plan to bring in cap and trade mechanism in India?
No, please repeat the question.
Is there any plan to bring in cap and trade mechanism in India?
So far it is not. So far it is not. It is practiced in the US and other countries, but in India it is not. It is being proposed, but not accepted so far.
Okay. Next question is from Mr. Vishal. If the government starts mandating certain industries to go carbon neutral, which industry would you be targeted first? Would be targeted first?
I think all carbon-based industry should be targeted. All carbon-based industry should be targeted, but government see lot of development activities and revenue earning from them. So because revenue coming from the industry going for the government. So government income is from these industries only. So they have to see the balance view. Balance view means you can say the equilibrium, ecology, and development.
Mr. Raghu wants to know, is carbon tax possible in India?
Yeah, that is possible. Already in other form, in Delhi, it is being paid by the HSD vehicle passing through India, they are paying. And some of the states already introduced in the road tax part, carbon tax.
Okay. The next question is from Mr. Anil Sashidharan. As agriculture, aquaculture also, do agriculture, aquaculture also impact the global warming, or will it act as CO2 sink?
It is, in paddy crops release methane. It is a greenhouse gas. Okay, but some crops do absorb the carbon dioxide. So it is the mix. It depends upon which area you are talking, which crop you are talking. It depends.
Mr. MSR Gopal has another question. He's asking, is it right to ask the new coming industries to adopt to utilize only renewable sources in industry?
Some industries can do it. Some industries can do it, to utilize in renewable energies, but not all. Not all. That is not possible. Some industries like electronic industries or some other industries, but not all. But the fraction of this thing is very limited as of now, unless the enacted law comes.
Okay. Mr. Ranjan Maharaj wants to know, is EV is really 100% environment friendly considering battery issues?
Battery is the issue. First people look for the convenience. Battery, but there are issue is that when they replace the battery, how they replace when they replace. How replace means some person has a new car, new battery, and it is discharged on way. How they will replace? They want to have similar one. So there should be category. Then there should be already extended responsibility is already given to the battery manufacturers. But those batteries have to be recycled properly. And another thing is that the new car which comes, they should be having what kind of storage. The life of the battery is a big challenge.
Okay, sir. Next question is from
Another issue I want to supplement. Somebody traveling Gurgaon to Ghaziabad, and battery finishes in between. How they will replace it in the traffic? Even helicopter cannot do it.
Swati Saralaya wants to know, do you think India will be 100% EV nation by 2030?
EV nation, I cannot say because there are 2030 means the vehicle being sold in until 2020 they have a life up to another 10 years. So it cannot be. But certainly share of EV vehicle will increase, and government has to subsidize its rate also. That is there.
Mr. K.N. Rajkumar wants to know that people say lead used in solar panel is harmful. How to tackle this in recycling?
Less use or more use of what? Please repeat your question.
Lead used in solar panel is harmful.
Achha, lead.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
sir.
Lead is always harmful. It
And
has
sir,
been.
how to tackle this in recycling?
This one has to recycle. The normal systems are there. There is a metallurgy to remove it. There is a recycling method to remove it. Or let him contact to me. I will tell him how to remove it.
Okay, Mr. Deepak wants to know, do we have plan to handle the waste battery and solar cell panel in coming days?
Yes, we have a plan on large scale. We have a plan. Recycling industry is going to have a good business, like because country is heading towards the circular economy.
Dr. C.N. Pandey is saying agroforestry considered to be the best way to sequester carbon. What government is doing to promote this sector?
I read one article of one of the secretary agroforestry, and she said that it is the best way to sink the carbon in the agroforestry sector. It is there, but government policies are already there. But issue is this: the region why India is so diversified climatic conditions. The rice is being grown in northeast, in the Andhra Pradesh south, and in the Punjab also. But Punjab is not native for the rice. They are, because they export it, good quality they produce it, they get the high money. But and they use the 5 times water than the northeast and uh, then the south people. So this kind of thing we have to see, we have to check. But because of political will, the things are going on.
Okay, sir. Mr. Anbu is asking, what are the Indian projects that are planned for reducing GHG by industries?
It is in the thermal power plants. They are asking in the ministry to give the calculations for the total carbon budget and total greenhouse gas calculations. They are giving. And the government is also making the industry-wise emission inventories, and in time to come they will make a plan. And the Ministry of Environment recently they constituted a 9 task force on different subjects to address the climate change. Their report is expected sometime in August end or something. Science and Technology Ministry is also working on that, I am also one of the part of the CCUS there.
Next question is, can solar panels be recycled?
Then solar,
Solar panels can be recycled.
yes, everywhere it is being done. It is being done, but it's after exhausting their life, 30, 40 years, whatever their life they have. Whatever life they have. After that only. They are being recycled. They are recycled means for disposal purpose. They cannot be reused. Their different ingredient can go to somewhere else and can be used the raw material for other industry.
Mr. Ujjwal wants to know that it is said that lithium recycling is very difficult and time taking. What is your view on it?
That is there. We are poor in lithium recycling, and availability of lithium in India is also very less. It was being imported from various places.
Continuing to his question, he also asked, in view of increasing use of EV with lithium-based battery, do you see that it would be major challenge going forward? How do you see future of sodium-ion-based battery instead of lithium-ion-based batteries?
I always look forward to alternative to lithium, sodium based or any other which can come. And in some industry, they have developed some new kind of industry which has the batteries, which has the larger, larger the storage time.
Mr. Natarajan wants to know, what are the sustainability actions that government is taking for making mandatory for the industrial specifics?
The SEBI has come out with a rule on 1,000 industries. They have to mandatorily disclose about their SDG goals and sustainability.
Okay, this another question by Mr. Raghu again. The ocean observe lots of carbon and it is difficult and it has become acidic. Is there any plan to tackle it?
Yes, certainly. Ocean are, I mean, a very good source of zinc, and ocean is being considered very seriously by various agencies, including government, and there is a plan to tackle this part also. By NIO hai, NIOT hai, Department of Ocean hai, and there are many dedicated universities for the oceans, marine sciences and all that. So they are very important.
Navneet Kumar wants to know what models you suggest for simulation of vehicular carbon emission in Indian scenario.
There are various models. Depends upon what you want to address out of this. What is your interest to address? You want to know whether the long range transport, short range transport, or you want to have the carbon sink in what form. So different models are there. But first you need to know where you are.
Next question is there any way to reuse damaged PV cells from solar panels?
I cannot say. I have no idea about that.
Okay, sir. That's all the questions we had for you. Thank you so much, sir, for patiently asking each and every question. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Sarma sir. Thank you. Very, very insightful session, and you have taken. And lot of questions are pouring in, but I would suggest, if anything, we can send them, or we will share with you the questions, so that if any specific answer is to be given, we will try to solve their problems.
Yeah. Thank you. I will answer if any question comes by mail. No issue. Anytime.
Yes, sir.
Sure, sir. Thank you. Participants, you can write if there are any further questions. You can write it to QCI and we will surely forward it to sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, Sharma sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Now, moving on to our next session, I would like to invite Shri Rakibuddin Ahmed, Manager Environment, Delhi International Airport Limited. is going to talk about the climate change and sustainability aviation perspective. Shri Ahmed is an environment and sustainability professional with 13 years of experience. Some of his key focus areas include climate action, ESG, green building programs, green financing, research and policy advocacy, training, etc. He has a Master's of Technology degree in Energy and Environment Management from Indian Institute of Technology, IIT Delhi. He has contributed to multiple aviation environment related reports and published research papers on the environment. We welcome you, sir. Over to you. Sir, you are on mute. Please unmute your mic.
Okay, apologies. So, good morning, everyone, and thank you QCI team for giving me this opportunity to share some of the information related to aviation sector, how we are managing climate change related issues or sustainability related issues within the aviation sector. And I have a small presentation, so I'll just try to share it. And when you get the opportunities to speak right after someone as knowledgeable and as experienced as Dr. Sharma, so it makes your task easy as well as challenging. Easy because he has already covered so many aspects and he has responded to so many questions. Difficult because now the level of expectation is really high. So that's really difficult to match. So just continuing with my slides. So climate change and sustainability and aviation perspective. So we all know what climate change is and how it is related to CO2 and how there is a direct correlation between increased temperature and the CO2 level in the atmosphere. So if we look at this graph historically, since the beginning of industrial era, the temperature is gradually increasing because of the continuous increase in CO2 concentration. And this is mainly because of human induced or anthropogenic CO2 emission, because there is a natural cycle where CO2 gets emitted and then it gets absorbed and that balance is maintained. But because of human activities, various human activities such as burning of fossil fuels or other activities, now the CO2 level is more as compared to it should have been when it was only natural. And in this regard, Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, IPCC, who is the scientific body of UN who gives different scientific inputs to UN, comes out with various scientific research and findings so that policymakers and governments all across the world can take various initiatives and then they can act upon it. So IPCC has given this warning that if we are not able to control the emission increase in temperature by 1.5 degree, if we are not able to limit it below 1.5 degree, then it will be really difficult to reverse the impact of climate change. And already by the time we crossed 2019 or 20, we already are at already have crossed kind of 1 degree centigrade as compared to the pre-industrial level. So the emission budget that is available with us is really very, very narrow. And most recently, IPCC has come up with their 6th assessment report. So IPCC comes up after every 3 to 4 years, they come up with these assessment reports with a lot of new findings, data, use of advanced tool, etc. Because with time, our understanding of climate change is also increasing. So they publish new findings and new scenarios are predicted. Sorry, somehow I came to the end of my presentation. Apologies. Yeah, so most recently they have published these 3 assessment reports where they have given an understanding of physical science basis. They basically have talked how this climate change is happening and what is going to happen. Then the various impacts, adaptation and vulnerability. This is mainly they have tried to create some scenarios based on risk-based approach where different risk scenarios have been analyzed and predicted. And then finally, the 3rd volume of this 6th assessment report is based on mitigation of climate change. and what are the different mitigation pathways which is available globally has been discussed in details in this sixth assessment report. And the kind of impact or the kind of risk climate change poses to humanity can also be understood from the global risk report, which is published by World Economic Forum. So they come up with this world risk report every year, and they basically highlight the top 10 risks which is going to impact humanity. So if we see in the most recent global risk report, so climate action failure has been rated as the highest risk. And out of the top 10 risks, 5 risks are from environment. So when if we just compare it how it was 5 years back or maybe 7 years back, so mostly the risk were of political or economic or technological kind of risk. But then fast forward to 2020 or 2022, you can see all the major risks are all environmental risks. So environmental has become a dominant risk factor in a global scenario. So that was basically a kind of background and context setting for our forward discussions. So if we look how aviation and climate change is interrelated, or how aviation sector contributes to climate change in terms of numbers, so the impact of aviation is really very small. So it contributes to only 2% of the overall CO2 emission, anthropogenic CO2 emission, when compared with all other sectors. So in that sense, it's small. And when we further break up the contribution of transportation sector and see how it is distributed, so aviation sector contributes to only 13%, whereas road transportation contributes to 74%. So like there is a small contribution of aviation towards climate change. So climate change also impacts aviation. So aviation is very vulnerable to climate change. And how it is impacted by climate change. So it basically some of the key outcome or indicators of climate change are precipitation change or wind change, extreme events, temperature change, sea level rise, etc. So precipitation change, whenever there is a precipitation change, so airfield or the airport, in many places it gets flooded, which impacts the airport operation, and also how people are accessing the airport, how people are traveling to the airport, it also gets disturbed. So in that sense, there is a operational impact on airport. And wind change is also one of the significant impact of climate change on aviation, because aviation is dependent on wind, the way its runways are designed. It's basically designed in accordance to the wind direction, because the aircraft, they take off and land into the wind. So wind direction is very important. And because of climate change, in many places, it is seen that the wind direction is now changing. So changing wind direction then impacts a lot of pressure on how airport infrastructures are designed. Similarly, temperature change also impacts airport operation, because again, the airport infrastructure such as runways are designed considering the maximum takeoff weight of the aircraft, of various type of aircraft, and also considering the air density, how dense the air is, so that the aircraft can use lift force to take off after running in. So if the air becomes more light, the density of air goes down because of increase in temperature. So that will again put pressure on airport infrastructure. Probably we will need more longer runways in coming days. Then sea level rise will have obvious impact on airport infrastructure in terms of its structural stability, or also in terms of maybe water availability, etc. So these are some of the key factors how climate change can impact aviation. So globally, so aviation is considered as a global industry. So there are various initiatives or many things which are done at global level. And ICAO is the supreme body for aviation globally, which is called International Civil Aviation Organization. And International Civil Aviation Organization, or ICAO, is a specialized body of UN who looks after all the aviation related requirements. They comes up with various rules, regulations, procedures, standards, etc. And they also work on international aviation and how emission or environmental issues of aviation can be addressed. Then we have Airports Council International, Air Transport Action Group, International Airlines Air Traffic Association. These are some of the global bodies which works on various aviation issues, including environmental issues. Then in India, we have Director General of Civil Aviation and Ministry of Civil Aviation, who looks after various environmental issues, again including environmental issues. So as we know, ICAO is the supreme body for aviation globally. So they have this 5 strategic objective. So one of the key strategic objective is environment protection. And within the environment protection, they try to focus on aircraft noise, local air quality, and climate change, and how the aviation stakeholders should address or they can work on some of these issues. For this, ICAO issues various annexes. So Annex 16 is related to environment, and they have, as of now, 4 volumes. So volume 1 talks about noise, volume 2 talks about local air emissions, and volume 3 talks about CO2 emissions, whereas volume 4 talks about market-based mechanism, which we will see in coming slides. So today we will mostly focus our discussion on climate change. And so if we look at how aviation decarbonization has happened over the years because of various efforts put in by various stakeholders, including ICAO as well as airlines, airports, or government authorities. So there has been a significant improvement in terms of how aviation has addressed climate change related or emission related issues. And aviation as a whole, as a sector, is considered to be very progressive and technology driven and very innovative sector, because every day we get to see a lot of new technologies, new thinking process coming in and getting into operation. So it is estimated that there has been a 54% reduction in terms of CO2 per passenger per kilometer, CO2 emission per passenger per kilometer, when we compare any aircraft today or any flight that you take today, and if we compare it how it was in 1990. So this is the reduction that we have achieved. And what are some of the key initiatives taken by India or government of India as a whole? Because again, somewhere it will be linked to aviation. So I tried to put some of this as a background information, because and most of these things were also covered by Dr. Sharma sir in his discussion. So that I will just try to quickly run through, not spending much time on it. So these are the at the top, these are some of the key initiatives government of India has taken over the years. A National Action Plan on Climate Change was developed in 2008. Then in 2015, Paris Agreement was taken up, which government of India later signed and ratified. And in most recently in COP26, government of India has taken net zero as one of the commitment, which will be achieved by 2030. And in addition to that, there are some targets which have been taken into consideration, which will be achieved by 2030. And in most recently in Union Budget 2022 and 2023, I think for the first time, probably, there has been a lot of emphasis given to climate change, renewable energy, and net zero as a concept. And climate change is now called as sunrise sector as part of Union Budget. So that shows the focus of our government towards addressing climate related issues. And Ministry of Civil Aviation has also taken numerous initiatives to address climate related or environment related issues for the airport sector or aviation sector as a whole. So Ministry of Civil Aviation published National Civil Aviation Policy in 2016, which addresses a lot of operational issues, as well as it has a specific chapter on sustainability or sustainable aviation. As a follow-up to this National Civil Aviation Policy, Ministry again came up with white paper on National Green Aviation Policy, and it has identified some of the key action area which needs to be addressed by all the aviation stakeholders, including emission, green building, waste management, sustainable aviation fuel, efficient operation, etc. Then Director General of Civil Aviation, they also have published a lot of documents, informations, and guidelines. So DGCA publishes this state action plan, and also how India is managing CO2 emission from civil aviation, and they submit it to International Civil Aviation Organization on a biennial basis. Then they have published civil aviation requirement for airlines, how they need to ensure or how they need to comply with carbon offset and reduction scheme for international aviation, or also known as CORSIA. And they also have a civil aviation requirement for airlines and airports to address climate change and local air quality related issues. So some of the key climate change mitigation measures. So again, going back to ICAO. So ICAO in 2010 has adopted these two aspirational goals. So one of the aspirational goal was that every year there will be 2% fuel efficiency improvement, and it will go up to 2050. That was the target. And the second aspirational goal was that the aviation sector will achieve carbon neutral growth, CNG 2020. And how this will be achieved? So this will be achieved by combination of improved technology, operational improvement, by use of sustainable aviation fuel, and by use of market-based mechanism, or CORSIA in short. When we reached 2021, probably there was a need to take more stringent target or objective. So the global aviation community has taken a commitment that the aviation sector will become net zero, will work towards achieving net zero by 2050, and they will try to align itself with IPCC's 1.5 degree scenario. So this is what the global aviation sector has taken a commitment. And ICAO has also conducted a feasibility study on long-term aspirational goals. So whatever aspirational goals were adopted by ICAO in 2010, they have tried to revisit those goals, and they have tried to see whether these goals can be made more stringent and can be upgraded. So in this study, they have come up with various scenarios. So IS3, integrated scenario 3, is basically, it's called low readiness, low attainability, and high aspiration. So basically it says that we are not very much ready. In terms of readiness, the score is less, but then the aspiration is very high. Probably this is what we should all work towards, and we should be trying to achieve. And this scenario, under this scenario, what ICAO has come up with, that probably 87% of the overall emission can be reduced from the baseline scenario. And how this distribution of how this 87% will be achieved is 21% will come from aircraft technology, new aircraft technology, or existing improvement in existing aircraft technologies, 11% from improved operational procedures and operational infrastructures, and 55% from in the form of new fuels or sustainable fuels. And the remaining 13% can come from market-based measures such as CORSIA. A quick glimpse into some of the technological improvements. So the aircraft manufacturers such as Boeing, Airbus, Embraer, etc., they all are working towards improving or coming up with new and efficient aircrafts. So each new generation of aircraft has a double-digit fuel efficiency improvement, and it can go up to 20% or more. And some of the new aircraft such as A350 or Boeing 737 are highly efficient, and it consumes on an average less than 3 liters per 100 passengers per kilometer. And this fuel consumption is probably as good as any compact car or any efficient vehicle. However, the added advantage with aircraft is that it can travel much faster and it can go long distances, which probably is one constraint that we have with road transportation. Then there are a lot of aircraft manufacturing companies who are working on hydrogen aircraft. So Airbus has come up with this concept aircrafts, which they are saying will go into production from 2035. So these are some of the hydrogen driven aircrafts they have come up with, which will have different range and which will carry different aircraft, and that's why the changes or change in the look or change in design of these aircrafts. Apart from this, there are multiple aircraft manufacturing companies who are working on electric aircrafts as of now. A lot of pilot tests have been conducted. So on the right hand side, this aircraft is it's a concept aircraft by Airbus, and on the left hand side, that's again one concept aircraft by Boeing. However, currently the main issue with electric aircraft is its weight to power ratio, because the advantage with fuel or liquid fuel is that the initial weight is high, but once the aircraft is in cruise state, because it continuously keeps on consuming or burning fuel, the overall weight of the aircraft keeps on reducing, which helps in achieving increased efficiency towards the end of the flight. So, however, it is different in the case of electric aircraft, where the battery technology as of now is quite heavy, and then to carry that much of weight, and you need to continuously spend same amount of electricity or same amount of energy, which reduces your overall efficiency of the aircraft. However, probably with more innovation and improvement in battery technology, these things will change and these challenges can be addressed. And there are many operational improvements which have been adopted by aircraft. So they are now using a lot of lighter cabin equipment. Some of the aircrafts are getting retrofitted with circlets or winglets, which we can see as the bended aircraft wing, which helps in reducing the drag and air resistance while the aircraft is in the air. So it improves operational efficiency in terms of fuel, and also it helps in reducing noise. And then a lot of the documents which earlier used to be which were carried by the pilot has been now replaced by electronic devices. So it has also again helped reducing a lot of environmental impacts and also weight of the aircraft. The seats which are used in aircraft are now more light. On the ground also, there are a lot of innovation and technological change have taken place. So taxi boat is something which we will also see in coming slides. Is something one of the green technology which helps aircraft to move on the ground during the taxi process or during the movement in the apron area. So by use of this taxi boat, while using this taxi boat, the aircraft need not run its main engine, which runs on ATF. And then there is a significant emission reduction when the aircraft is on ground. So sustainable aviation fuel is something which the aviation sector globally is working very aggressively, including India. So what is sustainable aviation fuel? So sustainable aviation fuel is something or some fuel having the same properties as the fossil derived ATF fuel, aviation turbine fuel. However, the source or raw material is of renewable nature. It can come from natural sources, or it can also come from sources such as waste material, used cooking oil, etc. And there are different conversion processes which are approved by ASTM approved and ICAO approved conversion processes by which these raw materials can be converted into sustainable aviation fuel, and then it can be used in aircraft. So aircraft manufacturers are also making changes for some of these some of the sustainable aviation fuel, which are very specific to some of the raw materials, can be used in the aircraft engine as it is without any modification. However, for some of the fuels, some minor modifications of aircraft engine is required. So as of now, many manufacturers and aircraft companies, they have gone up to 50% blending, whereas mostly it is used for 10% blending in the existing ATF. But there are companies and manufacturers who have gone or who has claimed that 50% blending can be done in their aircrafts. Currently, the work is on for ensuring 100% blending of 100% replacement of ATF by sustainable aviation fuel. And to ensure that whatever sustainable or alternative aviation fuel is derived, there are some stringent sustainability criteria which needs to be fulfilled by the fuel to be called as a sustainable aviation fuel. So these are, ICAO has given this 12 category which needs to be ticked by any fuel to be called as a sustainable aviation fuel. So it covers some important aspects such as greenhouse gases, carbon stock, how it is impacting water, how it is impacting soil, air, conservation, biodiversity, waste and chemical use, human and labor rights, land use rights, and water use rights, local and social development, food security issues, how it is addressing, etc. So this needs to be ticked. So any fuel which will be produced before 2024, for them, as of now, only 2 criteria needs to be ticked, which is the first 2. And any fuel which will come into production after 1st January 2024, they have to tick all the 12 boxes. In India also, there are a lot of studies which is going on. So there was one study done by World Economic Forum. So the objective of the study was to prepare a roadmap for Indian aviation so that 100 million passengers can fly by 2030 using 10% of SAF blending with conventional ATF. So this report outlines what are the feedstock available, what are the raw conversion technologies, what are the policy changes required, etc. And how, because as of now, sustainable aviation fuel is 2 to 5 times more costly as compared to conventional ATF. So how this financing can be done for making it feasible. So some of these issues have been identified and addressed in this report at a very high level. From GMR Group, we are also working on a sustainable aviation fuel, where we are working with some of the key players such as Group ADP, Safran, which is an aircraft manufacturer, Airbus, Exxon, who is biofuel producers, and Total Energy, who is the energy giant. And we are trying to do a feasibility study and see how sustainable aviation can be made feasible from India's in India's context and from an airport's perspective. So once this study is successful, we also intend to go and develop a pilot plant. So market-based mechanism is something which I have been repeatedly talking about. So it's called CORSIA, Carbon Offset and Reduction Scheme for International Aviation. So this is one mechanism or procedure which was developed by ICAO to ensure that there is enough flexibility for the airlines to address their emissions. And this will be basically addressing only the international flights, because the emission from the domestic flight is considered under domestic emission under the purview of UNFCCC. But wherever there is an international flight, so international flight means, let's say there is one flight which is taking up from New Delhi and landing at New York. So any emission happening from this type of flights is covered under ICAO, and for this type of flights, they have developed this CORSIA mechanism. So CORSIA will be implemented in 3 phases. The implementation has already started. Pilot phase and first phase will cover up to 2026, starting from 2021. And second phase, which is basically the mandatory phase, will be starting from 2027 and end in 2035. So basically, in this scheme, 2019 is considered as baseline for all the airlines which are running internationally, and any emission from this 21 onwards, whoever has agreed to participate in the pilot phase, so they will compare their emissions with 2019 level, and if there is a net increase in the emission level, they have to reduce that emission. So they can either plan for some reduction. They can think of using efficient fleet. They can think of using sustainable aviation fuel, and then still, if some emission is left over, that emission has to be offset using carbon credits under the CORSIA mechanism. So this is something which airports are working. So there is one global framework for airports to reduce and act on climate change and reduce emissions. It's called Airport Carbon Accreditation. And it has 6 different levels based on the type of efforts and initiatives adopted by airport. It starts with mapping and goes up to all the way to transition. So mapping is basically, in mapping, the airport needs to identify all the sources of emission, and then they need to quantify the sources of emissions, and these sources of emissions needs to be verified by a third party. So that's called mapping. And in the reduction, apart from what is required in mapping, in the reduction, basically the airports need to take some targets to reduce their emissions, and then they should work towards it. Then they should be able to achieve this target. And once this activity is completed, then the airport can claim this reduction level. The third step is optimization. So in optimization, apart from completing the requirements of mapping and reduction, the airports also need to work with stakeholders, because in airport, there are multiple stakeholders. It's not only the airport operator who works in the airport. So there are probably 200 to 300 stakeholders for big airports like Delhi, who works together with all these stakeholders. And then the airport needs to ensure that apart from reducing their own emission, they are also able to account for, or they are also able to measure for the emissions of their stakeholders, such as airlines or fuel providers or flight catering units or ground handling agencies or any other retail outlets which are or retail companies which are operating within the airport. So neutrality is basically, apart from fulfilling all the 3 steps, when you try to reduce the emissions which are coming under scope 1 and scope 2, and whatever leftover emissions are there, apart from reducing, that emission again needs to be offsetted by using carbon credits. Then transformation and transition are the 2 levels which have been added more recently to ensure that airports, while taking targets, the airports are in line with IPCC's 1.5 or 2 degree scenario. So if anybody is in line with 1.5 degree or 2 degree scenario, then they can claim to be in line with transformation and transitional requirements. And in transition, the additional requirement is that, again, the leftover emissions needs to be offsetted using carbon credits. So these are some of the requirements from airport carbon accreditation. And this is how in a typical airport, the various sources of emissions are distributed. And as we all know, as per GHG accounting standards, these emissions are divided into scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. So scope 1 covers all the emission sources of emission, which is basically directly controlled by the airport operator. So this includes emission from the airport operator's vehicles, from diseases, from fire practices, from refrigerant leakages, etc. Scope 2 is basically the emission associated with electricity consumption. And scope 3 is basically all sources of emission which is not directly controlled by the airport operator, but happening within the airport, such as emission from the airlines, from ground handling agencies, from third-party service providers which are present in the airport. In India, this is how the distribution of airports are currently in terms of airport carbon accreditation. So there are no airports at level 1. So the level 1 airports have migrated to level 2. So there are 4 airport authority run airports in level 2, which includes Kolkata, Bhubaneswar, Varanasi, and Trivandrum, which of course is now with private developers. Then level 3, there are no airports in level 3. In level 3 plus, we have Bangalore International Airport, GMR Hyderabad Airport, and Mumbai Airport. No airports in level 4, and level 4 plus, which is the highest level globally, is occupied by Delhi International Airport Limited. In fact, Delhi Airport is the first airport in Asia Pacific region to achieve this level 4 plus, and only the second airport globally to achieve this level 4 plus. So some of the key initiatives which are taken up by airports in India are use of renewable energy. So when we talk about renewable energy, so for airport operator like us, the key considerations are that resource should be available, whatever renewable energy we think of, that resource should be available within the airport. It should meet techno-commercial feasibility, and there are certain airport specific requirements because the airport is a highly regulated zone, highly regulated or restricted area. So any type of technology cannot be implemented in airport. So it has certain height restrictions, certain operational area restrictions. So all those criteria and requirements has to be fulfilled by the technology. Then only it can be planned. So as we all know, solar, wind, biomass, hydro, geothermal, tidal are examples of some of the most frequently used renewable sources of energy. If we look at all these sources of renewable energy, probably solar is the one which is most convenient and can easily be implemented in airports. Because wind, again, we have issues with respect to its heights. Then biomass requires a lot of energy, a lot of space, and then supply chain is relatively cumbersome. So that, and also there is an issue of continuity of raw materials. And hydro is again very location specific. Same is the issue with geothermal. Probably this is not very convenient for airports in India, where we don't have much resource available, and even if we have resource available in some places, probably we don't have airports in those places. And again, same is the issue with tidal energy, which is again very location specific. Currently, a lot of airports in India are working on already using renewable energy. So Delhi Airport is currently running on 100% renewable energy, which is a mix of on-site solar and off-site hydro. Then Cochin Airport is one airport which has been running on 100% solar for quite some time now. In fact, they are supplying more energy than they generate to the grid. They are generating more energy than they consume and supplying the remaining energy to the grid. Then Hyderabad Airport has established 10 megawatt of solar plant. Then we also have a lot of airport authority run airports who are having solar power plant. So the biggest capacity is with Kolkata Airport with 15 megawatt. And some of the news articles which have in recent times highlighted this renewable energy initiatives of airports in India. Another key initiatives which airports follow is green buildings. So mostly the metro airports, and now even some of the tier 2 airports also, they are following green building standards, and then this basically helps in reducing overall environmental footprint, and also helps in coming up with highly efficient design, and it helps in resource conservation in terms of the energy that is consumed, the water that is consumed while running the airport or developing the airport, and also how the waste is managed, what are the type of different materials that goes into construction of this airport, and what type of indoor environment quality in terms of temperature, lighting, daylighting, etc. are basically managed through the use of this green building concept. Energy efficiency is something which the airports focus a lot, and because airports are are usually energy consuming energy guzzlers, you can say, because airports are big facilities and it has multiple areas, distributed operations, so the need of energy is relatively high. So some of the advanced airports such as Delhi, we have building management system, automated and integrated building management system, refrigerant management system, energy efficient systems and equipment, indoor environment program to optimize natural resources and also to give better ambience and better passenger experience to travelers. And then also we have energy efficient lighting systems to save on electricity consumption. So these are some of the key focus area for airports. Then green transportation is something which is catching up very quickly in airports all over India. So Delhi Airport has already implemented electric bus services and now is going for adoption of e-vehicles. Some of the airport authority run airports are also working towards electrification of their fleets. Operational excellence is something which the airport is again focusing. It's called airport collaborative decision making. So this operational excellence procedure or this airport collaborative decision making is basically a tool or IT platform which basically helps in better communication, establishing better communication and as maintaining transparency between the key stakeholders. So whenever there's any aircraft event has to be planned, so there are 4 key stakeholders, like there is airport operator who provides the resources and the infrastructure. There is airline operators who of course flies the plane. Then there are ground handling agencies who provides various services such as fueling services or catering services to the aircraft. And then there is air traffic control service providers who basically guides and helps in maneuvering the aircraft from one place to another. So this ACDM tool helps in better planning and live information sharing between these stakeholders, and it helps in because it helps in better planning. So it leads to reduced delay and reduced queuing time. And there was one case study which was done by Airport Authority of India, and it is published in ICAO website. So it says that if 1 minute of taxi time can be reduced in a year, Delhi Airport can save close to 35 million kgs of CO2 because of implementation of this ACDM, considering we have 950 movements per day. So that much benefit that we have from this ACDM. And now Delhi Airport was the first to implement this ACDM in India, and now multiple airports have adopted. So this is the taxi boat, which I mentioned in earlier slides also. So taxi boat is basically a green technology which helps which helps the aircraft in ground movements. So if you look at the top graph, so it basically shows the conventional taxiing procedure of aircraft. So if from the apron area or from the parking stand, there is a pushback vehicle which pushes the aircraft back, and then once the aircraft is aligned from the red line, the start of the red line, the aircraft starts its main engine and it moves all the way from the taxiway and waits for the ATC signal before entering at the runway. And once it receives its ATC signal, then it enters the runway and then takes off. So this is how the conventional taxiing process takes place. But in the current taxiing process, using the taxi boat, the taxi boat itself does the pushback. And then it also helps the aircraft move forward using its engine. During this process, the aircraft engine need not be used. So taxi boat uses its engine, and then the aircraft is pulled forward, and it gets disengaged at the end of the green line, where the aircraft starts its main engine, does the warm up, and it moves forward and waits for the ATC to enter the runway before taking off. So this is how basically the taxi boat helps. So the entire red line on the top graph is replaced by green line below. So during this procedure, as per our estimation, one single aircraft can save 80 to 85% of overall emissions. This is another green infrastructure or low emission technologies that is used by airports. So this is called bridge mounted equipment, or in short BME. So once the aircraft is on ground, for lighting and cooling requirements, it uses one of the aircraft engine, which is called auxiliary power unit APU, which is at the end of the aircraft, which is towards the tail of the aircraft. So if there is no electricity supply to the aircraft, So the aircraft has to run that APU, and it runs on ATF, so it leads to a lot of emissions. By providing this bridge-mounted equipment and by supplying electricity, so the requirement of APU is eliminated, and it also saves a lot of electricity, a lot of energy, a lot of emissions. And so these are some of the key reduction initiatives which are being done by airports. So Delhi Airport, because we are also discussing about net zero and how various sectors can achieve net zero. For at Delhi Airport, we have developed our net zero plan, and we are trying to achieve it by 2030 or before. So for achieving this net zero target, we have identified these 8 boxes, which we are currently working on, like energy conservation and efficiency, develop green infrastructure, use of renewable energy, operational excellence, working with airlines, then low carbon transportation or green vehicles, increased sink, through tree plantation, GHG management, and airport carbon accreditation. And by now, I'm sure you have realized that we have discussed all these 8 boxes in various places in the previous slides. And this is how we think we have planned that we will be able to achieve net zero by 2030. So around 5% of our energy of our GHG emission reduction will come from conservation. Green infrastructure will help us reduce 10%. Improved efficiency will also help us in 5%. Water conservation will indirectly help us in reducing 2%, and 1% will probably come from green transportation, and the majority will come from 75%. So what if there are slightly, let's say, there is a slight variation in green infrastructure or energy conservation, or savings that we are expected from improved efficiency, so that will be taken care by use of that will be addressed by use of renewable energy, and only probably 3% emissions will be left over, which is hard to abate. So those kind of emissions, we will go for removal options, either through by investing in forestation type of projects, or by purchasing carbon credits from forestation types of projects, or from CCS, carbon capture and storage type of projects. And this is how the entire 100% emission will be reduced from the baseline scenario. While we talk a lot about the mitigation measures, how it is happening globally, what are the things that airports are doing locally, at the same time, I think we also need to focus on adaptation, because climate change is not only about reducing the emissions, it's also about how we adapt to the changing environment and changing climate, because climate change is happening, that's for sure. So it's very important that we also focus on adaptation strategies. So for adapting to climate change, the airports can use, basically they can use this framework, or they can work like this, where they need to identify the current as well as future risk of climate change, and then identify and analyze the risk and their impacts. Basically, what are the key risks to the geography, and how it is going to impact the airport operation in various aspects. Also, there is a very strong linkages between various indicators of climate change. Like there will be direct linkage between increased temperature and water scarcity. There will be direct linkage between increased temperature and some natural hazards, or maybe some fire hazards. So it's important not only to identify the risk, but also to understand the linkages between the risk, and how controlling or not controlling one risk can lead to difficulties in other area. Then categorization and putting those risks into a kind of matrix based on its severity and its frequency is one important thing that we need to do. And accordingly, based on its categorization, then action needs to be developed, and then it needs to be implemented. And then there should be a continuous review process to ensure and to check the effectiveness, all the entire process of from identification to implementation, and that needs to be done on a regular basis. So some of the climate change adaptation strategies which have been adopted by airports nationally as well as globally are adoption of business continuity planning system, wherein key systems are identified which are vulnerable to climate change, and then redundancy plan is developed. Green infrastructure is something which basically like use of innovative material, use of material with low heat transfer and low U value are something which airports are working. The nature-based solution is something which is probably more relevant for coastal airports. This also are being taken up by airports. revised design and operational approach in terms of how we look at the designing of stormwater drainage system, or how we look at designing the airport infrastructure itself in terms of its strengths, in terms of its ability to withstand increasing temperature, needs to be relooked. Then use of data analytics and digital twin to create the artificial airport in a digital form, and create some what if scenarios to see how, if some climatic parameter changes, how it is going to impact the airport, and how the airport can respond to those changes are also important. Advanced weather prediction system is something which is very crucial for airport operation. If the climatic events such as thunderstorms, rain, strong winds can be accurately predicted, then the airport operation can be planned accordingly. And this probably will help us in ensuring that flight diversion, etc., can be reduced. Then insurance coverage is something which is not only important for airport sector, but now sectors all over the infrastructure sector all over the world are working towards insurance cover for climate damages. Then competency development of the team working for the airport is very important. How they understand that various climate change risk, and then how they take actions based on those knowledge and competency that they have. And then collaboration among various airports, because different airports are located in different geographies, and each airports have their unique expertise or strong area. So the collaboration between airports also will help in a big way in the longer run to address some of these key issues and challenges. So now we have realized that there are a lot of things that needs to be done. There is the need to adopt innovative technology. There is a need to develop green infrastructure. There is a need to adopt renewable energy to address these impacts of climate change, whether it is in terms of mitigation or whether it is in terms of adaptation. So it all comes with a cost. So from where this cost will come, or how these airports or how these infrastructure companies are going to fund these expenses. So for this, there are some innovative financing mechanism. So green finance is something which is catching up very fast, and it is becoming very popular. So green bond is one such financial instruments which can be raised by any company for investing money or funding for green projects. So this is basically done in line with green bond principle. There is a green bond principle which tells you precisely what are the requirements, what are the eligibility criteria, how the projects can be identified, what should be your governance mechanism once you issue the bond, and how you need to monitor those expenses, and how you need to report those expenses to your investors. These all are done in line with the green bond principle issued by International Capital Market Association. So this green bond principle has identified these as some of the key sectors or type of projects which can be sponsored or under green finance. So renewable energy is one, energy efficiency, pollution prevention and control, environmentally sustainable management, and biodiversity conservation related projects, green transportation related projects, sustainable water and wastewater management projects, climate change adaptation related projects, eco-efficient production technologies, or green buildings, etc. If anyone is coming up with such type of projects, so the expenses can be covered by green bond, by the share of proceeds raised through green bonds. So, and because the initial topic was climate change and sustainability, so we have mostly covered a lot of things on climate change, whereas along with climate change, some of the environmental issues also gets addressed. But still, I have just tried to quickly summarize what are the key other environmental issues that the aviation sector as a whole is addressing. So reducing noise is something which aviation sector is working continuously. If you compare aircrafts of early aircrafts, maybe to 1960s or 1970s, and if you look at how noisy the aircraft are today, so the noise has gone down by more than 80%. And with each new generation of aircraft, there is a significant reduction, 15 to 20% reduction in the noise level of aircraft. Then improved air quality is something which the aviation sector is continuously working. This is again go hand in hand with climate change. So if you try to improve fuel efficiency, if you try to reduce your emissions, all your emissions goes down, not only CO2 but also your local air pollutants such as SOx, NOx, PM, etc. Green manufacturing. So aircraft manufacturers are working towards use of recycling material, lighter material, etc., so that the load on virgin materials can be reduced and then environmental impacts can be reduced. Circular economy, waste recycling, etc. And then reusing in their in the entire value chain is something which aviation sector is working very strongly. Then building resilience to climate change is something which we have just recently discussed. Then aviation sector is also contributing to all the UN Sustainable Development Goals in a big way. So I'll just try to quickly see what are these Sustainable Development Goals. As we all know, there are 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and these 17 Sustainable Development Goals comes up with 169 targets and 231 unique indicators to ensure how these targets are being met. So aviation as a sector, as a whole, contributes to almost all of these 17 SDGs, and with a varying degree of, in some of the area, the contribution of aviation sector is very strong. In some of the areas, the contribution or impact of this aviation sector is relatively low. However, the point to be noted is that in all these areas, there are certain contributions from the aviation sector. For example, when we talk about no poverty, the aviation sector has raised 160 million USD working with UNICEF for and this fund is diverted for ensuring that poverty can be eliminated in various areas across the world. Aviation sector continuously distributes foods and commodities that helps in reducing hunger. It also is one of the very good mode for good health and well-being in case of emergency or in case of any medical support. So aviation sector is the one who pitches in. Then quality of education. People are traveling using aircrafts or airport services to distant places to get educated. Then gender equality. So aviation sector, one of the most gender balanced sector globally. So almost 41% of the entire workforce of aviation sector is female. And then clean water and sanitization is something which airlines and airports are working equally. And similarly, there are multiple indicators which goes on affordable and clean energy, decent work, and economic growth. So aviation sector is considered as economic multipliers. So wherever there is an airport, so the airport basically uplifts the entire area. It creates job, it creates business opportunities, it leads to tourism. So the entire economic condition of the entire surrounding area goes up. So in that sense, it is one of the very strong contributor to SDGs, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. So aviation is considered to be a very innovative industry, and it develops a lot of strong infrastructure such as airports, road networks, metro connectivity, etc. And reduced inequality, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production are some of the area where aviation sector is contributing. So we have discussed in a big way how climate action, how aviation sector has adopted climate action, and how it has successfully addressed a lot of these climate related issues, and also for working further towards reducing some of these impacts. Then life below water is also because some of the airports are coastal airports where they have taken multiple initiatives where they have protected sea life, or where they have even protected the coastal area. They have protected the ingress of seawater in the mainland, and so that the water resources can be protected, etc. And aviation sector has also worked for protecting life on land. So aviation sector works in a big way with various NGOs and various government agencies to prevent wildlife trafficking, etc. Peace, justice, and strong institution, which is a very global topic, global agenda. So in this agenda also aviation plays a very strong role because it ensures connectivity to distant places, and then it ensures better communication between people. So this brings me to the end of my discussion. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you so much, sir, for such a crisp and informative presentation. And first of all, congratulations to DIAL, as well as you have already informed us that Delhi Airport is India's first airport to run solely on hydro and solar power electricity. So congratulations to you, sir. And as aviation industry has always been my keen fascination, there's one thing which I would like to ask you, as you may or may not be aware that aviation industry has been, if I may use the word, accused of noise and air pollution, which you have also discussed the sustainability goals of aviation industry. So do you think steps like this, like the Delhi airport becoming hydro and solar, this will help? Is it the first step towards that sustainability goal?
I think you are absolutely right. There are certain questions raised in terms of how aviation sector is impacting air pollution or noise pollution. But if you really look at the numbers, probably the contributions airport or aviation sector is uh, perceived to be polluters. But then in actual, if you really look at the numbers, probably we are not as bad as we are called or we are seemed to be. So that is one aspect. So contribution from airport or aviation sector is really low. And with that minimum impact, the benefit that aviation sector gives is probably tremendous, is very huge. So as of now, we don't have any replacement for aviation. Till the time we don't have any alternatives, probably this will be one thing that we have to continue with. But then having said that, again, I would like to repeat the contribution of aviation sector is really small if we compare with any other sectors. And apart from that, there are a lot of innovations which are coming up in terms of technological changes, in terms of like use of renewable energy, in terms of exploring battery operated aircraft, sustainable aircraft, hydrogen based aircraft. So I think once those technologies are realized or it is commercially available for use, then I think all of the issues will be addressed to a great extent.
Thank you so much, sir. We have a few questions for you. Mr. K.S. Madhavan wants to know, sir, you mentioned about Airbus carrying 100 passengers and 200 passengers and also about electric aircraft. In such case, will passenger carrying capacity be reduced and make air travel inaccessible to many, including cost considerations?
Yes, so actually, if we talk about the electric aircraft, as of now, the technology that we have, so this is not a direct replacement for the commercial aircrafts that we have. So these aircrafts are, as of now, very small. Probably 30 to 40 passengers can be carried, and the distance range is probably around 300 to 400 kilometers. But then expectation is that because as of now, almost 30 to 40 again different aircraft manufacturing companies are working towards improving this electric aircraft technology. So with time, probably we will have aircrafts, bigger aircrafts that can carry more passengers. But as of now, it cannot be a direct replacement of the civil aircrafts that we have. So in that sense, probably still we will take some time before we can compare how costly it will be as compared to the current type of aircrafts.
Mr. Sanjeev Goyal wants to know what is daily CO2 emission load from airport like Delhi and Mumbai.
As of now, if we talk about Delhi airport's emission load, so I will say it will be very small because we are running completely on renewable energy entirely from 1st of June 2022. And also we are now going for adoption of electric vehicles. So in that sense, the overall emission from airports for the specific area for which airport is responsible is very negligible.
Okay, sir. KN Rajkumar has a question. Sir, you use the term green infrastructure. I wish to know what has been done and how it is accounted towards the carbon sink.
Okay, so green infrastructure is basically one concept or design principle wherein basically you try to minimize the environmental footprint of the building. Like it starts with how you identify the site, how you select a site, then how you design the building, how you design on the orientation of the building, then what are the system and equipment that you use, what are the efficiency level of the system and equipment that you use, what are the materials that goes into your buildings. And many of these things are done basically using computer simulation, so which gives you different scenarios and results. So then you get to know, okay, if I use this material, then I will have this much of savings. If I use this material, my efficiency will go up this much. So that is one aspect. And when we talk about green infrastructure, so apart from the building, also at the surrounding of the building is also looked at, like how much of green vegetation that we have maintained, how much of trees that are maintained in the surrounding area of the building. So in that sense, it helps in reducing CO2 emissions, and also it helps in reducing something which is called heat island effect. Like for example, if you measure the temperature difference between a city or a developed area and a non-developed area. So there is a significant difference in terms of temperature. So the developed area will always be more hot as compared to a non-developed or a rural area. So this green building principle or concept basically helps in reducing overall energy load, overall emission of the building, and also it helps in basically creating a better environment altogether.
Mr. MSR Gopal, he praised your presentation, and with that he has a question. What is the contribution of renewable energy sources compared to fossil fuels?
In airports, in Delhi airport, or what is the question? Can
He
you
didn't mention that. I think he meant with the aviation sector only.
Okay, so aviation sector, so different airports are working towards adoption of renewable energy. So different airports are in different places. So and as of now, Delhi airport is running on 100% renewable energy. So is Cochin airport, which is running on 100% renewable energy. Bangalore airport is almost running on close to 90% renewable energy. And Mumbai airport is also coming up with their ambitious plan of running on site as well as offsite renewable energy. So I think that they are working in the right direction. And also there is a big focus from Ministry of Civil Aviation, which is urging airports to adopt green energy and green technology and to reduce their dependence on fossil fuel.
In addition to that, he also wants to know net zero emission is possible by which year it is possible with regard to the airports.
Yes, for Delhi airport, we have taken a target to become net zero by 2030. And in the presentation, I have also discussed what are the different elements where we are working to become net zero. And also the contribution of each of these elements, like how much of contribution we are expecting in terms of improved energy efficiency, how much of contribution we are expecting from green infrastructure, how we are going to address emission through our renewable energy usage. So that breakup is also given. But to summarize, we are targeting for 2030 as a target from Delhi airport. From the global perspective, globally, the aviation sector is looking at 2050 to become net zero.
Next question is by Mr. Rakesh. He wants to know incentives by central bank, RBI, and other investing into green bonds of airports, something being planned in India, just like Europe.
Actually, this is up to the organization, up to the airports, if they are able to demonstrate enough green projects. So there are a lot of interested investors. So it need not be the investor. It's not that the investor needs to be from India only. It can be from outside also. So if the company can establish its adherence to the green bond principles, and if the company have enough credibility, then the green bond can be raised. So it's not that we have to depend only on Indian investors or Indian companies. So there are a lot of Indian companies or Indian banking institutes are also available, like SBI or any other companies who are also putting money in green financing. But then there are multiple foreign investors also available.
Ms. Purva Kulkarni, she's writing, thank you so much, sir. Very interesting and new information. I have a question with regards to waste generated on flight due to use and throw eatables in bottles. Is there a process to recycle that? How is it managed otherwise?
Okay, so this all waste, they are deboarded at the aircraft, at the airport, and then the airports, they have facilities where these airports, this waste are segregated. And then once these waste are segregated, then many airports, they are managing it within their facility, and some of these airports are sending to outside agencies. So this all the recyclable waste basically goes into the recyclers, and all the wet waste or food waste part, it is either composted on site or biogas generation takes place, or in some places they also give it to municipal authorities where they have an agreement with the agencies. So this is how the overall waste gets managed.
Thank you so much, sir. These were the questions for you. And if participants have other questions for you, they can write it to QCI. And I would request you to be with us till the end of the conclave so that if there's any other question for you, we can discuss it later as well.
Okay, so thank you everyone.
Thank you so much,
thanks
sir.
QCI team again, and thanks all the participants for listening. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Ahmed. And really, it was a very nice presentation. Thank you. Yes, Himali.
Now we have our last session of the conclave by Dr. S.K. Goyal. Chief Scientist and Head, CSIR NEERI Neri, Delhi Zonal Center, India, who is going to speak on environmental and climate change challenges, EIA professionals to lead the way. Dr. Goyal has done Masters in Chemical Engineering with a specialization in industrial pollution abatement from IIT Roorkee in the year 1989 and a PhD in Environmental Science and Technology from Nagpur University in 2002. He has more than 100 research publications in generals, conferences, and supervised about 20 MSc MTech students on air and water related topics. He received Professor R.C. Singh's Prize for Greatest Practical Importance paper by the Institution of Engineers, India in December 2006 for the paper Optimization of a Lagoon System Treating Municipal Wastewater. We welcome you, sir. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, madam. Very good afternoon to all the participants. I'm trying to upload my presentation right now. Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
It is visible.
Okay, thank you very much. The title is slightly different and I'm focusing, I'm sure the participants are more than 180. I think good number of participants are there. Congratulations to QCI and ABET. And I'm really thankful to QCI and ABET for giving me this opportunity to share my views on this very important aspect and topic of the I would say now the century. I can take that this is the point that where we have to take it forward. And I see that EIA professionals has a lot of important role to integrate the things. Whatever the individuals are doing, they have the opportunity to integrate the things and present it more befitting manner to various stakeholders so that the outcome of those mitigation measures or the whatever is being done is really implemented in the country. And we are what we are facing or we are expecting that the temperature would rise, become a kind of the neutral situation in different regions, different states and the country and so on. So you can see the carbon cycle on the left hand side and just imagine what happens when the temperature of our body goes plus 1 degree centigrade. The normal temperature is 36.8 and then 98.4 degrees, 6 degrees Fahrenheit. If it enhances by 1 degree centigrade or 2 degrees centigrade, what happens?
Sir, sorry
And
to interrupt.
that
Can you please put your PPT in full screen? It will be easier for the participants.
okay, I thought it is in the PPT that mode. Okay. No, I'm finding it difficult actually from my side. I'm finding it difficult actually, ma'am.
So do you want us to share the
Yeah,
presentation?
please,
Okay,
you
I'll
can.
do that. 1 second.
Yes, it's fine.
Is the presentation visible?
Not yet,
Yes, Himali, it is visible.
but it is not visible to me.
Is it visible now?
No, madam.
So request you to check your network connection.
No, network is okay, madam. Just a minute. I'll. Yeah, it is visible now.
Okay, sir.
So you will change it or I'll change it?
So I'll change it. You can tell me.
Okay, sure. Thank you. So I was saying that just imagine that what happens when the temperature of the body increases by 1 degree, 2 degree or 3 degree, maybe in 10 degree Fahrenheit, then what happens? Something is going wrong inside the body. And what we are looking at when the temperature of the earth is going to be changed by 1 degree, 2 degree or 3 degree, then what impacts will have on its entire body. Isn't it? So that means that requires a lot of efforts, lot of aspects, a lot of things to be done to ensure that the temperature of the atmosphere or the earth does not increase by the in the manner that it is increasing and remains at the level it should be at a normal level. And the parameters responsible for that are the greenhouse gases and majorly the carbon dioxide. Then how to control or how to manage carbon dioxide is the biggest challenge for all the community, all the scientific community, all the stakeholders. And I feel that the EIA professionals, that is a very big group of the persons who are dealing with the industrial development so that they can make a balance between the industrial development, economic development, as well as keeping the environment uh, in place. So I see that the environmental professionals can lead the way or can take the responsibilities to quantify their own aspects of the different entities. Like Mr. Ahmed has said that the aviation sector, how they are going to do it. So this becomes one of the examples that how the aviation sector, again, the quantification comes that I think that point is still missing, that how much the individual entity is contributing to and how much it can reduce to. So that aspect remains. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir. I have moved the slides.
But it is not. It has not moved from my side.
Sir, the slides are on EIA professionals.
It is only the first slide it is showing.
One second, sir. Let me check.
Are other participants able to see the next slides?
Sir, you can read the comments in the chat box. Everyone is
Yes,
writing yes.
I think they are
Yes.
able to see it.
Yeah.
So what I will do is that yeah, I think the next slide is on the QCI conclave. That one, na? Are you able to see that?
Sir, it's on EIA professionals, EC and FAE.
Okay. Just I have called my colleague. I think आप unshare कीजिएगा, मैं share करने की दोबारा कोशिश करता हूँ मैं.
Sure,
Somali,
sir.
please unshare the screen. Yeah.
यहाँ पर 2 क्लासेस
ये presentation जरा
शेयर करनी है इसमें।
हाँ. अब इससे यहाँ से करना है ये?
हाँ
हाँ?
आपकी वो स्लाइड शो पे ले लीजिए।
स्लाइड शो पर भी इसे कैसे ले लेंगे यार?
नहीं, अभी आप प्रेजेंट कर देंगे।
अभी तक नहीं कर रहा था, अब करूंगा मैं। नहीं, ये मत करो, इसको तो क्लोज कर दो। इसके पर
आप इसमें कंट्रोल सेट कीजिए। कंट्रोल टैब।
Is it visible, madam?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Yes, it is visible.
Full screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So I was, is it moving now? Is it moving now?
So we can see the first, yes, sir. Now it's moving.
Okay, I think there is some time lag is there, so please bear with this.
Ye-
I'm sorry that.
No issues, sir.
Okay. So as you know, sir, as you know that the three issues are flagged in this conclave, and these are very important issues. And the kind of stakeholders involved, I think so, almost every kind of stakeholder is there. And I see a lot of opportunity for the EIA professionals to integrate the things in one basket and put it right perspective. And what the EIA professionals are to do. You can see here the interlinkages of the carbon movement or the carbon dioxide or the methane. What the EIA consultant or EIA professional or the EIA coordinators or the functional area experts of different domain on the air part, the carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, methane, in the monitoring in the ambient air, in the monitoring in the stack emissions, or the prediction of those things, how this is traveling into the atmosphere and how it is going to affect the area, any region. So I am looking for the carbon neutral regions basically. So what is the impact of individual activity and then how it is distributed in the entire area. So here what the EIA professional normally do is that they consider 10-kilometer area radius, and this becomes 314 square kilometer of the region. So that means there is an ample opportunity for the EIA professionals to look into the carbon neutrality of the entire region, particularly for the for the large scale sectors like power plant, refineries, oil and gas. Like that, they can think of developing the carbon neutral region right from the EIA perspective. And you can see that what is the interaction of the carbon is there in the entire ecosystem, whether it is the air environment, water environment in the terms of carbonate, bicarbonate on the land side, again on the soil side. So you can see everywhere the interaction of carbon, carbon dioxide, methane indirectly or indirectly, and the aspects related to with this. And what needs to be done is the identification of the sources, their magnitude, and how this can be quantified, monitored. Do we have the kind of CO2 levels available in our different country, in different parts of the country, in different regions? Perhaps not. Like we have air quality monitoring network. Is there anything that is available on the CO2 vents? It is a very important parameter now from the climate change point of view. Do we have that kind of thing? Perhaps not. And the budgeting of different sources, then control particularly on the industrial sites, or whatever the control would be possible, and whatever is not possible, then how it can be managed. So this is the overall concept or thought. I think that AIA professionals can lead the way in developing the carbon neutral regions when they are carrying out the EIA study for any particular industry, and it can be really can be converted into that how this particular industrial can be made a carbon neutral industry in the time to come. Maybe a perspective can come out from this exercise that how this industry, any industry can be a carbon neutral industry in the in a phase wise manner. You can say in 5 years time, 10 years time, 15 years time, or what is their present emission load in terms of carbon dioxide emissions, and how it is impacting the surrounding environment, and how it can bring the carbon neutrality in the region. So here are few suggestions at this point, and then I'll say that why these suggestions are there and how this can be achieved in some way or the other. The climate change issues should be dealt with air pollution problem in the country. Like you might be knowing that do we consider CO2 as a pollutant or not? I think still it is not considered as a pollutant because it is a natural product of any process, any combustion process, or any even the we are exhaling lot of carbon dioxide, but it is not considered as a pollutant, but it is a part of the natural atmosphere. And then certainly it has a larger implications, and along with methane, it can be included in the industrial emission norms depending upon the specific industry sector. Then again, it can also with both the parameters can also be included in ambient air quality standards. At least a large network of monitoring should be there to understand what are the current levels and what we are to maintain. I think this part somewhere is not there in this process, though we are talking a lot about the emission reductions, and the estimations are based on the emission load from a particular combustion activity. But what levels are safe in terms of CO2 in the ambient atmosphere, that is not at this stage known. The need to adopt holistic regional sustainable development to develop carbon neutral regions, district by district, state by state, and EIA process also need to be aligned, or somewhere this component has to come in the EIA process so that it starts thinking building from the beginning itself. Then assess effectiveness of the implemented CO2 reduction measures, various policies, practices in terms of improvement in CO2 in ambient air. So ultimate what we need to improve, like for example, this SO2 levels were high in diesel, petroleum products, and diesel was sulfur was reduced to a great extent from 5,000 ppm to 50 ppm or even 10 ppm. So there was a target. It has to be reduced so that the ambient the sulfur dioxide levels do not increase. So a perceptible change is there, quantifiable change is there in the atmosphere. But what about the CO2? And I'm sure that the EIA professionals can play a major role, and that too supported by the proper training by the QCI NABET or something like that, that will help to really make it a more meaningful. Now the question comes why and how. We all know what are the potential impact of climate change and what will be the impact of 1 or 2 degree rise in the temperature. It will affect the entire ecosystem. It will have the effect on the human health, agriculture, forest, water resources, coastal areas, species and natural areas, lot of floods, droughts. I mean, any kind of impact we can think of, it will be there if the temperature of the entire Earth goes high by 1 degree, 2 degree, 3 degree, the magnitude of the activity or the magnitude of the impact should be certainly will vary with the rise in temperature in the regions. And what are the reasons for this increase in the temperature? You can see that the population, when we say that the pre-industrialization era, what was the population? And population is directly linked to the requirement of the development in any country and in any region. And the population was nearly 1 billion in 1750. It became 2 billion tons. You can see the right hand side figure that it took 120 years or 126 years to become 2 billion, and then 33 years to become 3 billion. And now almost every 11 to 12 years, 1 more billion population is added to the world. Now the earth volumes area is constant. That cannot be changed. So now you can understand the type of requirement, the basic root cause of the problem is where. As the previous speaker also said that there is only one earth suitable at this stage for the human beings. And if it continues to be like this, then what will happen in the time to come in another 50 years or another 100 years? I think the situation is going to be grave, and how it corresponds to the carbon dioxide levels. The carbon dioxide levels were something about 275 in 1850, which became again 315, 318 2006, and these are the predictions that what could be the levels by 2100. And if you see the decadal increase in CO2, decadal increase from 1850 to 1958, it was 3.7 ppm per decade. From 48 years, next 48 is 11.5, and from 2006 to 2100, I think it is going to be nearly 40 ppm per decade. And India is going to be the most populous country in 2023. I think a recent report has come on 11th of July, and it could be 1.68 billion by 2050. So I think more stricter or more pragmatic approaches have to be adopted to ensure that the kind of problem we are facing and the people, I think they can have very well realize and relate this kind of issues that they are observing in their cities, in their metro cities, the kind of issues they are seeing. Now, what is the global average of the atmospheric CO2? It is something about 420. Now, the basic question is that in any region, what CO2 level needs to be maintained? We have monitored carbon dioxide in some of the regions in Delhi where it was found to be something about 800 plus ppm. But of course, the temporarily it is not uniform throughout the seasons and the months. It varies. It can plus minus 20%. It varies in different regions and the different seasons also. So in order to see the very simple cause effect relationship and the action points on the issues, what are the different sources and various conversion processes which are generating air, water and solid waste, and what are the action point? Action point is the individual sector, individual industry, individual organization, region, scale, and individual self also. So everything is now to boils out to be the individual, like the aviation sector has been explained. And then aviation sector, what is the contribution of individual airport? So many airports are in the country. And not only the contribution of the airport, what is the aviation in totality? What is the contribution of the flights? What are the how many flights are landing or taking off from the Delhi airport? And what is the total contribution of those flights? So there are two aspects. One is the airport itself, the activities at the ground level activities at the airport, and the second is the emissions from the aircrafts. So how much is that and how much that can be reduced to make it a carbon neutral? Can we say that it is a zero emissions for the carbon neutral airport or the airport operation, including the aviations? And if not, then how much time or how many years it will take to achieve that goal? And it applies to different industrial sectors. So now coming to that what are the targets that the previous speaker has told about the net zero by 2070, and these are the short-term goals of 2030. See that how many can be achieved in terms of the power. And what are the major sources of carbon footprint in the country? That the energy or electricity is the largest contributor. The second is agriculture sector. The third is manufacturing or construction building activities. Fourth is transportation. Fifth is industrial processes, and balance are others. And these are the total the fossil fuel consumption in the country. You can see the total emissions, how these emissions have grown over the years from 1990 to 2020. The coal is still the largest contributor, oil, natural gas, and other. Now, my point to emphasize here is that if we want to develop the carbon neutral regions, maybe on district to district basis or state to state basis or any region, what is the consumption of coal in that area? What is the consumption of oil in that area? What is the consumption of natural gas and other sources of fuel or the energy is there? Can that be quantified in that area? So I'm scaling it down from the country level to the state level to the district level, or maybe a domain of the EIA professional of 10-kilometer radius, that is 314 square kilometer. So can that kind of estimates be made and say that in the time to come, this is the total emission load as a business as usual scenario, the baseline scenario, and if the growth continues, what will be the projections for 5 years, 10 years, or where the cut has to be made? What are the different policies that have to come in that area, and what the industry where for which this kind of exercise, EIE exercise is being done, how much it will further add to the carbon emissions in the region, and what CO2 levels have to be maintained in that area. So here the role comes of the EIA professionals, and they have to account the every source, every kind of fuel that is being consumed in that area. And these are the major sectors that you can see that the thermal power plants, of course, this is the largest contributor of CO2 emissions. Then oil and gas, petrochemicals, chemicals and fertilizers, cement, steel and alumina, mining, metallurgy, transportation, pulp and paper, and other industrial sectors. So these are the sectors which also require the EIA environmental clearance from the ministry. I think EIA professionals has a larger role and responsibility to account as well as to suggest the measures as a hello. Hello.
Yes, sir. Now your presentation is visible. I think
Okay.
you have
Okay. I'm
network
sorry. I'm
issue.
sorry. There was some connectivity issue.
Yes, yes. No issues,
Okay.
sir. Continue.
Yeah, so these are the major sectors I think which can be taken up on priority because these are the largest consumer of the energy, and This could be the focus sector. Someone asked also that which are the priority sectors. So these are the starting sectors which we can think of. And beyond that also, that once the proper methodology and proper approach is developed, I think we can again take up the other sectors also. So now the technological, if you look at that, then each industry, this is the for the sector. Then when we go into the individual sector or the individual unit, then what is the efficiency of each unit, each process, each industry, that again needs to be optimized with respect to the different parameters. Though we say that the broadly one cannot think only for the carbon dioxide emission reduction, but again also from the entire environmental point of view, whether the modification in the technology or the process is reducing my other wastes also. So apart along with the other waste, it reduces the carbon dioxide emissions also. So each and every industry or the unit or the process unit has to be looked into from the perspective that how much waste can be minimized from that process, including the carbon dioxide emissions. So that how much more quantity can be generated from the less quantity of the resources in that process. So this becomes the industry as a whole, or the activity or the individual process unit in in that industry. So that what are the total inputs of the raw material are there, and their quality of the raw materials then that goes to any process in the industry, and what is the total quantity of product that is coming out, and what is the conversion efficiency of the each process unit, that needs to be looked into and optimized so that the wastes are minimum and it is the more and more efficient processes are developed. And the secondly, once the products are there, then how efficiently these are being transported and utilized. If you look at the example of the power sector, you can think of that 1000 megawatt power station requires something about 12,000 tons of the coal. And in the process, it generates something about 30,000 tons of carbon dioxide, along with 680 tons of sulfur dioxide and NO2, and something where it generates 400, something about 32%, 34% of the ash of the total coal being used. So if and in the country the transmission and distribution losses are more than 20%. This is the national average. Earlier it was more than 30%. Some improvements have been done over a decades or couple of decades. But again, in some of the countries, the T&D losses are as low as 4%. So even without doing anything inside the industry process, if the transmission and distribution losses are taken into consideration, lot of things, lot of energy can be saved, lot of resources can be saved. If the focus is on the T&D losses, if it can be made to 10% in the next 5 years or 10 years, I think there will be a lot of improvement in the amount of carbon dioxide that is going into the atmosphere, the sulfur dioxide going into the atmosphere, and the quantity of ash that is generated. So like that, I mean, each process needs to be optimized, each industry has to be optimized, and again, the self-assessment has to be done by each individual industry. So it cannot be said that it is the power sector, it cannot be generalized. It has to be each industry unit has to optimize the processes and see that what they are contributing to the environment, what are the resources being used, how effectively the resources are being used, and how much it is contributing to the environment in terms of air, in terms of water, in terms of different gases, and including what is the output and how the output is utilized. The power industry, the generation sector can say that this is the responsibility of the other sector, distribution sector, but again, it has to be integrated. If the distribution center is very effectively operated, perhaps the losses could be, the losses are maintained, the much lesser resources will be utilized to generate the same quantity of electricity. And this needs to be applied for each industry. Now, again, I am seeing a very simple structure that how the regions are to be developed as carbon neutral region. My focus is on developing the carbon neutral regions, and I'm trying to emphasize on how the EIA professionals can play an important role into that. You can see any region which is having a land, lot of water bodies are there, river is there, ponds are there, lakes are there, maybe there, and then different kind of activities which are contributing to air pollution, water pollution, or the solid waste generation, and how these interact in the atmosphere, the air pollution sources interact in the air. So what are the total emissions, quantification of the total air pollution related activities, what is the total GHG emission generation in that area? And the next question comes that what is it gets into translated in terms of resultant air quality, or including the level, what are the levels of the GHG gases, especially CO2 and methane. So unless we do not link these two aspects, I think we will not be able to address the issue properly. If you want to develop the carbon neutral regions, we have to understand what are the levels that are persisting and that needs to be maintained. So how the different, what are the different sources of emissions? What is their contribution? How to quantify for a region, for a district, and then what are the levels it is resulting into the air quality in terms of CO2 levels, in terms of methane levels, in terms of other pollutants also. And then where the control has to come, whether it is the agriculture sector, whether it is the industry sector, the transportation sector, or any other source which is prominent in that area. So different activities have to be mapped, they have to be quantified, and again, these are the resultants are to be monitored on regular basis to draw a comprehensive plan. Yes, how this is how the this problem or the carbon neutral regions, what are the sinks available in that region? What is the forest available in that region? What are the other green areas available in that region? So all those things are required to be accounted, mapped, quantified, then only we can think of developing the carbon neutral regions. You can see how the carbon moves in the ecosystem, in the atmosphere, in the water body, in the geological formations. But this is again a long problem, long process of carbon cycle movement into the ecosystem. Now I'm just giving you an example of that towards the developing the carbon neutral region, and that too in a sustainable manner. If you look at the example of the NCR, which is the area is something about 58,000 square kilometer, and wherein Delhi area is only something about 1,483 square kilometer, with a population of 46 million in the NCR, and population density of NCR region is 788, and the population density of Delhi is something about 12,500 persons per square kilometer as per 2011 statistics. And I think this number has gone tremendously high. It's something about 17,000 or 18,000 at present. And some of the areas, even the density is something about 30,000 persons per square kilometer in eastern part of the Delhi. So you can see that it has a regional implications also, where if you want to have the carbon neutral region, Delhi again, you will find lot of pockets are there where the even the heat island effects will be there, and pollution density becomes population density becomes one of the important indicator for that what will be the likely activities and the emissions in a particular given region. So like that, the Delhi NCR region is having lot of uh, sources of air pollution, power plants. You can see in the Panipat region, you can have the refinery, fertilizer plant, sugar, paper mill, brick kilns, number of small and medium scale industries using multiple fuels, household cottage industries, and other sources like domestic fuel consumption, excessive heating during winter, agricultural garbage burning, stubble burning, vehicular exhaust emission. I mean, so many sources of air pollution are there. We are resulting into the serious problem of air pollution in the region. And then now the question comes, and this is the agricultural belt, the entire western UP, Haryana, This is the agricultural belt. And stubble burning is one of the major challenge, causing a lot of air pollution problems. Now the question is, can this biomass generated in the agricultural fields be utilized in the industries as a fuel? And if yes, to what extent? What should be the collection mechanism? What are the efforts towards that? And just look that if those biomasses are not utilized, it is burnt in the open. What are the impacts it is having? It is used in the households. What is the impact it is having on the individual household, the ladies, the children working in the house? So now the thought process is that can this entire biomass generated be utilized, be converted into some kind of fuel, in the solid fuel or in the form of the gases? Many approaches could be there for that. And then how it can be converted into fuel and be supplied to the industries. And a kind of ecosystem has to be developed so that this fuel available, where it is available, it is taken from there to some place and then it is utilized in the industries. And just give you a comparison that if what happens if the stubble is burnt in open field, that is the uncontrolled combustion or the burning, and if it is a controlled combustion. So we have generated in terms of air pollution this scenario that how much air pollution it causes. You can see the benefit. There is no benefit of burning in the open field and with lot of air pollution problem. The concentrations are very high and of course the people within the immediate vicinity are severely affected because of the this high pollution levels. And sometimes you know that lot of things are going, that lot of stubble burning issues are there in the country, and it is affecting the Delhi particularly when the post monsoon season, every post monsoon season we find this kind of problem. And when this is burnt in a combustion, in a controlled combustion manner, there is very less emissions from that and almost nil, you can say, and with the energy recovery from the biomass. So now the question comes that what is the right approach to do that? And this biomass, where it is a major source of air pollution in the, even if it is in the rural, used in the rural household areas, and the government is trying to supply the LPG cylinders for the cooking. So now can it be the again the next phase of the Ujjwala 2 kind of thing, but here the next phase would be that the people are encouraged to buy the LPG cylinders, and whatever biomass is generated in their area, in their village, that gets converted into fuel and that is supplied to the industries. So some sort of mechanism has to be created that in a district, in a region, so that if we take the NCR itself as a region or the different district in that region, so whatever biomass is generated over the in the different months, that is collected properly in some mechanism, and that again converted into the fuel, and that goes to the supply is made to the industries. So that kind of mechanism can be developed, and whatever biomass is generated, it becomes a source of income for the farmers. Instead of burning in the open field or the using in the household, they can earn from this raw material, the bioresource raw material, and convert it into finance economy. Now the third point is that how to get the environmentally sustainable regional development. So again, it is accounted the topmost priority is the human being and the economic progress with the reasonable quality of life of the people. And what are the different activities in any given region? Like say the district or the 10-kilometer radius area, what are the different activities and different processes taking place? How much resources are being utilized? And to get the maximum benefit of that, and the waste generated in the by that activity are assimilated by the region itself. It does not go beyond that. So that kind of neutrality or the balancing approach, like the economic development is there, but at the same time, the ecology of that area is not affected. So balancing has to be done. That is the sustainable, the concept of sustainability, that and the how long, how many years it can sustain the same kind of thing. And whatever the interventions or the approaches are required, that has to be taken up to minimize the gaps between the resources consumption and waste generation through technological advancement, so that the entire process becomes sustainable over the period of time. And the approach has to be adopted on district to district basis. And there are at present there are nearly 770 districts in the country. So the responsibility has to be given to the district authorities then and the uh, so that the a kind of budgeting is done for the entire district. The environmental budgeting has to be done for the environmental district perspective rather than individual pockets. I think then it can be a long-term perspective. We can think of having the carbon neutral region or the ecological uh, appropriate ecological region, or with the economic progress as well as the quality of life for the people. And this requires the integration and creation of robust ecosystem for regional sustainability. Proper planning is required, proper assessment, evaluation is required. It requires lot of inputs or these agencies to work together. The teamwork has to be there for each and every aspect: inspection, monitoring, analysis, emission load assessment, including GHG emissions, meteorological aspects, modeling, control, coordination, evaluation, implementation, effectiveness monitoring, and continual improvement. Then only we can think of developing the carbon neutral region in the time to come. Again, I'm saying the time to come, because the baseline is to be generated. What is the present emission load for each district? If the focus is carbon dioxide, then in terms of carbon dioxide emissions or the methane emissions or the GHG emissions, what is the present load? And with the growth in the population, how this is going to change in next 10 years or 20 years or 50 years. So once this kind of accounting is done or budgeting is done for the each and every district, then I think we'll be able to see that what efforts needs to be made in which sector. There are multiple approaches have to be taken into consideration. It is not a single approach that will work. It are multiple approaches have to be sector wise, industry wise, region wise. Multiple approaches have to be taken into account. Then only it will be the ultimate goal of having the balanced or the carbon neutral regions or the carbon neutral state country can be achieved. And in addition to that, I think at individual level also, we need to understand what is your contribution or what is my contribution in terms of carbon footprint. What is my carbon footprint or your carbon footprint? Have we tried to understand and try to evaluate that as a quantify that what is your contribution in terms of the consumption, in terms of electricity, transport, waste generation, as an individual, as a family, what is your contribution? So I tried to quantify this for 2 years in 2009 and 2011, particularly with respect to the key parameters on the vehicle usage or the electricity usage, garbage generation. And I found that the electricity consumption is the major contributor in the entire activities. The second is the transport, whether it is transport or the personal usage of vehicle, or it is the flights, or it is the train, whatever it is. What is the equivalent contribution of different activities? And waste, the domestic activity seems to be the very low. The usage of cooking or the waste generation contributes only the 10% of that, but the major 90% is because of the transport related activities or the power consumption in the or the electricity consumption in the household activities. So this kind of estimation gives me kind of thought process that what should be my vehicle usage. Can I, when we say that lot of things can be done by the individuals also, but how to do it? The first thing comes that we have to account it. We have to record our activities, monitor our activities, and see that how much it is. The basic consumptions we have to be accounted. I did it for 2 years. What is the usage of the two-wheeler, four-wheeler, and the electrical units? I found that nearly in a year it was same. You can see the 5,000 units per year in 2009 and 2011, 5,064 at that point of time. And it was about 2.5 tons per capita consumption was 2.5 tons per year per person. And the national average of 2010 was 1.35 metric ton carbon dioxide equivalent. In 2019, it was 1.87. This is the national average figure, and I found that my activities are 2.5 tons per annum at that point of time. These are some of the initiatives that one individual has to can take, but this seems to be, I mean, how much really can be done by the individual is a big question mark, that how much we can really practice and do these kind of initiatives in our day-to-day life. Unless we are committed and we quantify our actions and activities, it is very difficult to do that. So to conclude, again, I'm just summarizing my suggestions, whatever I said, the few points initially, that climate change issues should be dealt with air pollution problem in the country. The the important parameters, carbon dioxide and methane, should be included in the industrial emission norms, as well as should be taken into ambient along with the air quality monitoring network, so that we can, in less time, we can have larger network of monitoring these parameters also. And at the same time, the EIA process also should look into this aspect, that whether this carbon contribution of the CO2 and GHG gases are accounted in the clearance process, in particularly for some of the major sectors where the consumption is very high and generation of these gases are very high. Those are to be taken into account. And then again, whatever the major reduction measures are taken by the individuals, industry sector or the region, whether what is the effectiveness of that, and how it is translated in terms of the CO2 in the ambient air. And I see that the EIA professionals who are already trained to a great extent, I would say, are doing this kind of exercise in many of the sectors. Also, I think they can be properly aligned with the entire process to developing the carbon neutral industry or the carbon neutral region in a long way. And in this process, I think QCI can also play a very crucial role to build for capacity building, and the training needs to be given to the EIA professionals. So I think with this, I come to the end of my presentation. And again, I will say that overall development of the region, district, state, country through environmentally sustainable activities. This is the ultimate objective of each one of us, so that we can have a happy life, better quality of life, good health, good peace, good affordable facilities, job, employment, everything is there. So this is all I look at, that two things very important from my perspective, looking the entire region, entire ecosystem, entire economic progress and development in a sustainable manner. And I see that EIA professionals can understand the things quickly and convert those things in developing the carbon neutral regions, districts, states. This is what I see, and this is where the QCI can also play an important role. Thank you very much for the. I'm sorry for the problems, the technical problems happened today in connecting. But nevertheless, thank you very much for the patient hearing. I'll be happy to answer any questions there.
Thank you so much, sir. And yes, we do have few questions for you. Starting with Mr. Ganpati Raja Kesari. More than a question, it's a contradictory statement of what you have said, that CO2 increase is more due to industries and agriculture rather than population as the prime reason for CO2 rise.
See, these things are interrelated. Why more industries? Because more population, more demand is there. Very simple. If the population is not there, why so many industries will be there? So it is directly linked to that. The increase in population will require more resources, more industries, more products to be utilized by the people.
Mr. Rakesh has a question. Any plans for some sort of carbon footprints registry for products manufactured in India?
I think it is in the process and in the time to come, maybe couple of years, you will find something on that also. Yes.
Before moving to the next question, sir, could you please unshare your screen? It's
Yeah,
still
sure.
visible.
Is it unshared now?
Yes, sir. Okay, moving forward to the next question. KS Madhavan wants to know, sir, transportation sector is the largest contributor for the emissions. Should not the focus on emission reduction be prioritized based on sector-wise contributions based on precise study?
Yeah, of course, I fully agree. This is what I'm saying, that it has to be a 3-4 approaches are to be adopted. One is the sector-wise reduction. The second is the with the region-wise. Again, like the problems are not uniform throughout the country. We have even in Delhi, you see the entire area, the problems are not uniform. In certain pockets where the population density is high, the activities are high. So again, looking at that kind of network, we have to next level of thought process has to go, that if the problem is existing in this region, we at the end we want a reasonable quality of life for everybody, every citizen. So the problem is existing in the X location where the population density is high. Then how to account for that? And this is the first approach. The like the sulfur dioxide, sulfur is reduced from the fuel. That is from this kind of things, particularly from the diesel DG sets, vehicular exhaust. They are capturing the carbon particles, are making it paints or some other products, inks like that. But from the source, not from the ambient air. So capturing from the ambient air will be certainly will be very difficult, because a large volume is involved in that. But from the sources, it will be much easier to control and much easier to capture it.
KS Madhavan has written techniques like carbon sequestration, continuous emission monitoring of SOx, NOx in power plants, and mangrove forest replantation. Will they not create sustainable ecosystem?
These are all integrated part of that. So I mean, when we are monitoring what are the contributions and what is it is resulting into, and that needs to be monitored. So again, I'm saying that it has to be taken up in totality. It is not when we are talking of climate change, we talk only of the CO2 only. So it is the entire air pollution activity, what it is resulting, the other parameters also. So, that is the holistic approach has to be adopted. And when we are saying that yes, the industrial contribution is this much, what it is happening to the region. So regional features also have to be taken into account. Whatever it is there, whether it is the mangroves are there or any forest area is there, any kind of plantation is there. So that kind of approach has to be adopted. That is why I said that the AIA professionals will understand it much better and much easier to make it a carbon neutral regions, because they know that what are the different sources, what are the different activities, and what is the land use pattern of that area. So that is very important. How much is the agricultural area? What is the soil quality of that area? What is the water quality or the water bodies are present in that area? What is the mangrove is present in that area? So it requires the integration of all those activities and see that how much is the total contribution of the carbon into the atmosphere and how it can be made carbon neutral. I think that is why I see that is a important role of the EIA professionals in that.
Thank you so much, sir. These were the questions from the participants. And again, if participants have any further question for any of the speakers, they can write to QCI and we will forward it to the respective speakers. Thank you so much, Goel, sir, for such insightful presentation.
Thank you very much, QCI and ABET, Jha Sahab, Jindal Sahab, and my co-speakers, Dr. Sharma ji, Himali ji, and Ahmed Sahab. Thank you very much. Thank you, Vipin.
Thank you so much, sir.
Goyal sir, excellent presentation. Excellent.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
So participants, we now have come to the closing of today's conclave, and it's time now for the vote of thanks. However, before we move ahead to the vote of thanks, I would like to inform you that we will be sharing a feedback form by email, requesting everyone to spare some time and provide us your feedback, as it plays an important role for our group. With this, let me invite and welcome Mr. C.K. Biswas for the vote of thanks. Mr. Biswas is the CEO of NBQP board of a constituent board of QCI since April 2015, a 1985 batch BTech mechanical engineering graduate with over 30 years of experience in the field of supply chain management, quality management, including systems, process, product, services, export quality, TQM, business excellence, environmental management systems, including resource energy conservation, mainly in the automotive sector, FMCG and infrastructure sector. He is leading a young team of quality enthusiasts at NBQP to promote the concept of quality across sectors, including MSMEs and Pan-India, through awareness, training programs, quality improvement projects, award schemes, publications, and events such as quality conclaves and competitions. With this, I welcome Mr. C.K. Biswas for his vote of thanks.
Thanks, Himali. Good afternoon. I'm C.K. Biswas, as CEO at National Board for Quality Promotion. And NBQP is an integral board of the Quality Council of India, which was incepted in January 1997. It is dedicated for the promotion of quality amongst quality professionals, primarily at the industry sectors as well as service sectors, with a mission statement of to be a catalyst for the promotion of quality movement amongst all stakeholders. So as Himali said, NBQP organizes events like this called Quality Conclave, workshops, awareness programs, webinars, trainings. It has instituted various award schemes on an individual level, project level, as well as for it has supported other entities for instituting their award schemes. It has basically provided technical support to central state government departments and PSUs in implementing ISO standards, as well as in undertaking process improvement projects through Kaizen, Lean, 5S, etc. It also operates scheme for registration of consultants, auditors, and management systems courses, and individual corporate professional schemes, membership schemes. So today we had a very eventful day with all the eminent speakers, giving an insight, and effort was made to bring together the key stakeholders of the environmental fraternity on a common platform, providing them with an opportunity to share and discuss the emerging trends in technology standards and best practices. I'm sure that there have been a lot of value addition and takeaways from the very interesting sessions, which deliberated on the importance of net zero emissions, climate change, sustainability, and environmental and climate change challenges. Well, today we have had over 250 participants, and the conclave has been a success with such meaningful deliberations. I, on behalf of NBQP and NABET, would like to express my heartfelt thanks to the distinguished speakers from the government, PSUs, and the corporate world, who have spared their valuable time to enlighten us on the conclave team with excellent presentations. On behalf of NABET and NBQP, I would wish to extend my sincere and heartfelt gratitude to all the esteemed speakers of the inaugural session and the distinguished speakers of the technical sessions for having added value and enlightened all of us with the key deliverables on an important topic connected with the decarbonization, climate change, and sustainability, which is of global concern. So thank you, Dr. Jay Sharma. Thank you, Shri Ahmed. Thank you, Dr. S.K. Goyal. I've been fortunate to listen to only just one presentation of Dr. S.K. Goyal, and it was really very well done and very interesting. I'm humbled for getting this opportunity to thank you all, and your contribution would be recognized by a green certificate after planting a sapling in Delhi. I would also like to thank the esteemed delegates for being with us, without which this conclave would not have been possible. I would like to extend my sincere thanks to Dr. Manish Jindal, Sri A.K. Jha, and their team members for joining hands with NVQP and collaborating for such a noble cause. Last but not the least, I would also like to thank our media promotion cell, Sanjay Singh and his team, as well as my own NBQP team, Pooja, Ashish, and Himali. Requesting all to please send your feedback, as it helps us to continually improve our programs. Thank you again, and now we may sign off. Thanks. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.